it just happens to pan out that DF2 actually looks like AV has made some progress, and obviously looking forward to that.
Did you ever play RuneScape? You said it's similar to his. Did you start off with RuneScape?
Oh, yeah, I played RuneScape. I'm not sure whether I played RuneScape or Guild Wars first. It's all rather fuzzy at the time, but yeah, I played it.
Oh wow. Okay, so you might have started with RuneScape or Guild Wars, and Xpiher definitely started with RuneScape. This is just crazy. It's like the last few casts I've done. Everybody is a prior RuneScaper, which it's not. I mean, it's not a shitty game, but it's kind of an interesting way to begin your MMO career. I guess it makes sense. But for me, I suppose my first one might have been Ultima. Can't recall clearly, unless we're going to count MUDs. But yeah, so that's just interesting.
The thing was, is like Rune- RuneScape was kind of like the first game I played, but it was also, or one of the first games I played, but it was also one of the first games I realized like just how big cheating was in these games. Because the thing was, is like I remember back in RuneScape, you used to have massive packs cracking communities in that game, and you know, I know, what was it called? Jagex never admitted to it, but I mean, you'd have hundreds of accounts, moderators alike, getting hacked and people transferring the goods everywhere else. And I think that was a fairly good learning lesson in that game as far as uh, what led to a lot of success as far as these clans are concerned.
Were you guys living out in the
Just side
wild?
topic.
That's about all I remember from RuneScape: shooting cows with arrows and going out into the wild.
I actually played it before the wilderness existed.
Oh damn, you're going way back to the beginning then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I beta tested it.
Oh, that's nutty. Well, all right, guys, let's get off RuneScape. Let's get into something real, something that people really want to hear about, and that's Darkfall stuff. For anybody that's actually watching the stream, once again, I have my list up. I hope that you can read it. I'm not sure if you're able to, but I think we're going to jump into these 2 points here. And actually, before we get into this, I just want to go at you individually and sort of get a summary of your thoughts on what you've seen with the videos and the knowledge given by the devs about UW coming up, specifically how it relates to the Tassos. How it relates to the Tassos call interview, and just what do you have? Let's start with Xpiher. Sorry, I got distracted. Xpiher, what do you think about all the news we've been given regarding UW so far?
I think it's coming out. Looks like it's coming out really well. Pretty much every single video I've been impressed with. I'm really interested to see what Earth Elementalists have and a couple more of the warrior based roles are. I'm a little disappointed. Well, not just a little disappointed. I'm really disappointed that Primalist isn't going to be in game at launch. That I love playing support classes, and not being able to play one at launch really makes me QQ. But everything looks like it's going to be pretty good. But I want to know from what that hasn't been talked about. I want to know what crafting is going to be like more, because they said, I think during the interview they said something about not limiting how many crafts a person can do, and from the video it looks like you can set up crafting stuff and just walk away and it automatically crafts it. I don't know. I need to know more about that.
Oh, whoa, wait, no, okay. I'm having a hard time accepting that. If that's true, I don't want to say it sucks, because once again, this is definitely a new game. But from what Tasso said, if I feel like he said if you're going to be a hardcore crafter or you want to be a relevant crafter, that you're going to spend your time doing that as opposed to more PvP and PvE. And the guys who do PvP and PvE, they're not going to be as relevant as crafters. That makes me think you can't just go set something up at a station and walk away.
Didn't he say at the same time though that it's not going to take as much time? And we saw a timer on the UI. So I don't know. And with what you were just saying, with them being more crafting oriented and everything, I think that was more along the lines of, well, you don't have to ever leave a crafting station to level your character.
Okay, I could have sworn I was working when I was listening to this, but I thought he said something to the effect of he's talking about the time it takes to spend crafting. You're just not going to have the time to do both, but you can. So if you're playing for 16, 18, whatever hours a day, then yeah, you can do them both. But it's not like before where you're going to spend your downtime doing crafting. Or maybe this is exactly what you're saying, that you won't have downtime, so you won't be crafting. Zaffax, do you have an idea on this?
Uh, I think a lot of the crafting stuff is pretty much just speculation. I mean, I haven't really focused too much on it. The thing is, I think there's a lot bigger issues that, we haven't really got information on. I mean, as far as the crafting, I mean, I think you can pretty much infer it's going to be pretty much like it was in DF1. I mean, they added, another rank, but I mean, I really wouldn't, pull too many hairs out, as far as that's concerned. I just wait for launch. I'd say as far as like far more important topics go, I think there's a whole lot of information that AV needs to be giving as far as, day one plans.
Okay,
That,
like what?
you
What
know,
what sort of information do you want to tackle that they should be giving us?
well, I mean, you think about how DF launches go, whether it be the EU server, the NA server, whatever. And, AV's already said there's basically no siege weaponry in the game at the start, save for maybe siege hammers and battle spikes. Like all the cannons, all the warhawks, all the ships, they're all being removed. So it pretty much means that whoever gets the holdings, is going to keep them, and it's a first come first served basis. So what that says right there is that obviously launch day plans are like really important. But the thing is like AV's already said that they remove chaos cities from the game. So it's like okay, that's cool, but like where do you buy your shards? And is there anything to replace the chaos cities? Like, are there chaos banks in the different parts of the world, or is there literally no banks on the subcontinents? You have questions of the clan points. They mentioned that clan points can be needed to initiate sieges. So do you need clan points on day one to take holdings? There's a lot of information as far as launch is concerned that Tasis isn't giving. And unfortunately, when the one time we get him in a live podcast yesterday, you get such useless questions as like, is friendly fire still in the game? Like, who in the fucking who could possibly think that friendly fire wasn't in the game? So it would just be nice if we could get one of these more competent podcast viewers, whether it be yourself or Paragus or whoever, to actually get Tasteless in and say, look, I know you like hiding information, but let's be straight here that the game launches about a week and a half. There's a lot of info we need to have to even just make preliminary plans as far as launch.
Yeah, the one
I
problem with.
completely agree.
Go ahead.
I completely agree. But the issue is that it seems like they're launching it earlier than they would like to. So keeping this information back and forcing everyone to figure it out as they go buys them time.
No, but the thing is, the game's going to launch on the 12th no matter what, right? It's not like rolls
Right.
that is by time of, we'll switch it on the fly. Like Chaos Banks, whether there's anything to replace Chaos Cities, that's not something you just add in like the last week of the game. Like it's either there or it isn't there. It's not going to change. And there's no reason why AV can't give us that type of info. Like
Why
as
do you
far as
need
clan
it?
points, whether they're required.
I don't
Well,
think
it's
they
huge
will. I
because,
will.
well, like take day one, right? Day one on both the NA and EU launch pretty much consists of you get as much gold as you can as quick as you can. You build your clan, you get more gold, you buy a shard, and you run to the holding that you want as quick as possible before anyone else can do it. And that seems pretty simple. The thing is, like, take a subcontinent. So whether it be Cairn or Ruby or Yasam or whatever, let's take Yasam for instance. You know, the way that would work is if you wanted a holding, you would, you'd have all your people probably go orc since it's quicker. Run to Yasam, you know, get as much gold as you can, make your clan, get more gold, go into Tolenque, the Chaos City, buy the shard, and then run to the holding. But with no Chaos Cities in the game and potentially no Chaos Banks, as far as the subcontinents, that pretty much means that you have to literally get all the gold. You have to run, get gold, run back to the starter towns, buy the shard, and then run to the subcontinents with the shard on you. Like,
What's wrong with this being a
I mean, it's a
mystery, though?
hugely well. There's several hours difference planning wise. Like that, it's basically saying that because of how first come first serve it is, and considering that you're pretty much stuck with your results for a month. I mean, it could have really bad impacts on the metagame. Say like an important, like one of the bigger alliances, say goes to like Cairn, like say Sinister goes to Cairn, and they send all their guys there, and then they farm gold and realize that there's no Chaos City or Chaos Banks there, and there's no way to get the shard. Well, that means they literally have to go run back to Humanlands, buy the shard, and then run back. And by the time that would take, there's a good chance that you'll have someone else come in that's probably not one of the main players grab holdings, and so you could end up having like non-factor clans holding up all the real estate in the game,
Okay, and
and
if they're
that's
non-factor,
obviously like really bad.
okay, are
Yeah, but
you
there's no
really
speed
afraid
buttons
of?
in the game.
Are you afraid of a non-factor clan? I mean, if they're really non-factor, then you're going to be able to go in there with your siege hammers, suppress them, and pound out their stone.
Yeah, but we don't know what they're doing with the wall system. So the thing is, if they still have the wall requirement in the game, I mean, it's not that hard to build up a few walls. I mean, just go build up the walls, and you're not going to be able to break down half a city's walls with battle spikes and siege hammers.
I guess I don't. Okay,
So
the problem part I'm having trouble understanding here is, you seem concerned that a non-factor clan might
I was
snake
using it
a
as an
stone.
example. It's just one of those things of like, there's no reason why AV can't tell people just how to plan for the game. Like, I don't understand why it's so hard to just say, look, here's how you take a city on day one, as opposed to just being like, best of luck to you guys, whoever figures it out.
But what's wrong with that? Do you have
I
a
honest,
problem with that, Xpiher?
I honestly think it's because they're trying to buy time. It sounds to me how the game's launching, how it just came sprang on us and everything. It sounds like that they just simply ran out of money to continue developing the game without our support, and they just need to launch the game. If they launch it, don't tell anybody how to plan or anything. It doesn't give anyone an advantage. Everyone's fumbling around, figuring out how to play the first 2 weeks of the game, and that's when they can start adding in more stuff. With the whole Chaos Bank thing, I would like to know if they're in, but I assume they're going to be in because they said no chaos cities. Well, even without chaos cities, there was random banks all over the wilderness. I mean, there was that merchant and chaos bank right before you hit Yassam. Wasn't even Takia. Why would that be removed? There's no need for something like that to be removed. There was bind stones everywhere that weren't attached to any cities. Why would those be removed? It doesn't make sense to have those
No,
removed.
yeah, but the difference is like, you know, if say you know say you're like even a small clan and you're trying to grab one of these holdings, like, I think it's pretty safe that there's certain alliances that are going to be getting the holdings, first, like just from sheer numbers or from planning, whatever else. They're going to be getting this stuff. And so these other clans that, maybe we're trying to get the leftover ones, like how much would it suck to get the gold and then go run to the continent and
You there, bud? I cannot hear you.
find out that you need a clan point to some stupid shit like that, and that, you didn't get the holding? Well, then, there's no houses in the game at launch. There's no
I hear you,
runestone.
Zaffax.
You can't hear me?
But apparently the cast people are saying that you're breaking up.
Yeah, my ping on this vent is wow. It spiked up to 3K. We're back at 99. Oh, we've got an APOC raid here. APOC's bringing all his viewers in for a hello.
Well, I guess you can enjoy the extra people.
We will enjoy the extra people. Hello, people. Hang out. Listen to these two tomes of Darkfall just spill their silvery tongue voices directly into your ears. It's awesome. They've got so much knowledge, it's going to fucking shock you, and you're just going to be zombied out as you sit in your computer chair, just amazed at what sort of
But it's not.
information they confer on you.
But the thing is, like, so it's not like completely like, I don't want to get too much stuck up on like speculations about like what may or may not be in the game at launch. Like, obviously there's information that we'd all want Navy to have. I think some of it's more important than others, but it's probably better to move on to something a little
Well, I mean,
more
this isn't
substantial.
so much speculation at this point as it is. This is a tool, in your opinion, that they're not giving you this information. I guess for me, I'm not. Okay, I understand what you both are saying. You're saying maybe it's because they ran out of money and this and that, and they're rushing it. But I see this as it's a big mystery. The new world of Aegon, cities will be located in different places than they were before, allegedly. Things are different. And so we're all just going to jump in trying to figure it out. So the first one that figures it out will be rewarded. And the first one to act on their knowledge will have the city. What's wrong with that?
Well, thing is like, I just don't think it's like necessarily the best thing. If it's especially something like that's real hidden. I'm not sure if that's really the best thing for the metagame. Like, thing is like people make their plans going into the game and everything else, and I understand like a little bit of shake up here and there, but I'm not sure how healthy it is when you just completely when people plan for a game and then the game's just completely different than what they expected. Like, I can't imagine that being, very healthy as far as the game is concerned. The thing is, one of the nice things about Darkfall launch on the EU server and the NA server back in DF1 was that, for EU1 you had beta, and for the NA server you had EU before it. So people had a pretty good idea of like how the game was going, and so they could plan accordingly. But when you don't even give the people the most basic of information, I'm not talking about like which city's better than another city or stuff like that. I'm talking about just how to take the fucking cities to begin with, or like how they get the shard and how they carry it, or just the way the fucking, whether there's chaos banks and where they're at. It's very hard to get those preliminary plans and to make alliances and stuff like that. And you know, I just think I'm not saying it's going to ruin the game. They don't release the info. I just think that it would be better, had they provided said information as opposed to basically turning it to a game of chance.
Wow, I guess, not to belabor the point, but I totally don't see it that way. Once again, I do understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. I suppose if I was big into the metagame, because basically, even though Darkfall Online has been taken offline, people are still playing the game. And that is what is so fucking sweet about Darkfall. Right now, Zaffax is playing Darkfall, yet there's no physical game for him to touch. So from that regard, I do understand why you're unhappy with the current information flow regarding cities and binds, or the shards and whatnot. But from my angle, more of a casual player, and I like the surprises. I like to see the chaos and what's happening. I don't have much of a problem with it. I think it's a very interesting thing. It introduces a lot of unknown that I feel is positive. Yet I suppose if you're still playing the game, which you are, it's kind of negative. Would you say that's fair, or am I just way off? Am I dumb?
I think some of it's fair, but the thing is like I'm not sure what time periods exactly you play the game. Like I know you mentioned before you played a little bit at early EU launch and stuff like that, but particularly like when EU starts stagnating and NA starts stagnating, it becomes really obvious that at certain points it takes a long time to get siege plans going. Like it takes a long time to plan for different conquests and stuff like that. It's not like you just one day are like we're gonna go siege like this alliance and declare war on them. Like no, there's a lot that goes into it, and that you know the longer it takes for you to give people information, or the more hard or more difficult you make it for people, just the longer it's going to take for people to be able to make those plans.
The only thought I have that actually caused me to want to yield to you in this discussion is that they took Darkfall offline, so people who were playing it can't play it. They cannot continue the conquest that they left off with. And I think we all know that even though AV said this is a new game, that the same clans and players are going to port over to UW. So if we think of it from that angle, then I suppose you do have some sort of a rightful claim. And it's interesting, though, that somebody in my position, a casual player who has no interest in clan leadership or anything like that, I would just never think of that, and this would never be a major point to us. So that's very interesting that you guys brought this up. Is there anything else with the advent of UW that you guys have seen in the videos, or specifically, I'd really like to hammer more on this Tasso's interview with MMORPG.com. If there's anything that was specifically lacking or you think he could have done better. I thought it was pretty good for what I expected, but it sounds like that might not be the case with you guys.
I mean, Zypher, do you want to say something specific or?
I didn't catch all the interview. You guys got to understand that when it went live, it was 9 o'clock my time, 9 p.m. my time or so, and I've been partying all weekend. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few. General things that were interesting, but it was one of those things of more specific information would be nice. Like he confirmed the moon gates, which I know some people say like AV said this forever, but they really didn't. They said that they were removed from cities. They didn't say that they were moved. They said they were removed, and so it was nice to see them confirm that they were in the game. But it would have been nice to just get maybe a little better indication of how they work, or where they're going to be. Because something like an instant transportation system, that has pretty big ramifications as far as the game's concerned. And so it'd be nice to be able to prepare for that.
Yeah, I got to say that's absolutely fascinating. You're totally looking at this from a different perspective than I think a lot of the non higher level players are. Totally interesting. How about you, Xpiher? Just in general, with this lack of information for guild planning, does that impact you much? Or I think you said you're probably not going to be playing UW. Is that correct? But let's pretend you were. Would this impact you much? Do you care, or do you tend to think like Zaffa does?
I didn't say I wasn't going to play UW. I said I might not be able to. It doesn't affect me as much because I'm not a clan leader. I never go into games leading clans. Usually, I end up going a game solo because a lot of the clans I joined are like, "Oh, we're gonna stay on this shitty ass game." I play game. Don't get me wrong. I play games for years. It's just usually when I leave a game, it's done. So and the clan doesn't. I'm gonna agree with Zaffax on the points that he made about not having the information. The only thing I'd probably hope that AV does is that they will release that information launch day or just after launch. That way, because with the way the game's set up and everything's very competitive, so anybody that figures out that information is not going to share it with anyone else, and it's just going to put people at a disadvantage for no reason.
Okay. What are your thoughts? And I'm moving on here a little bit, but this is still about you, Dub, right now. The global banking. Tasso said that there have been some very heated discussions in the company over the concept of global versus local banking. Where do you guys fall on that line? Or which side of that line do both of you fall on? And how do you feel about Tasso's comments? And Xpiher, you might have missed it. But so Zaffa, we'll start with you. How do you feel about the fact that we will begin UW with global banking? Good thing, bad thing? What are your thoughts?
Well, the thing is like when you ask that question, I'm sure a number of people in the stream that know me from the forums probably like smash their face against their keyboards. But you know, I've been saying for a while that regional banking was a good thing. We've come up with a lot of systems, uh, including the community expansion. But the thing is when you remove chaos cities from the game, you really can't have, you know, proper regional or local banking. Like they kind of shafted that when the chaos cities were removed, which is a really unexpected change. But I think that the big thing is less so. I think that global banking is less of a problem than is the ridiculous amount of instant travel in the game. That I understand that AV and a lot of players feel that players should be able to get around the map, that they should be able to explore, that it should be easier to find PvP and stuff like that. But the thing is that if you think long term, the more instant travel you have in the game, the actual less PvP people find. Because I know you say that a lot of players don't think about the metagame. But the thing is that the metagame, pretty much determines the health of the game and the population, or the population for the game, and how PvP and stuff it works. And that when you have high instant travel in a game, it basically means that the people who are in power have even more power. Like they're able to enforce their power even, with even more ease. Like I know back in DF1, you know, Macking was really big, and there were obviously concerns about dupes and exploits and everything else. But what ended up happening is, you had a bunch of high-end players all join the same clans. Those clans had access to ridiculous amounts of funds and macros. And the thing is, like, had you not had a bunch of instant travel, it really wouldn't have been that big of a problem. Like, because yeah, they would have been able to influence, their immediate region. But it's not like they'd be able to teleport all over the world and just fuck up everyone's sieges and stuff like that. But the more and more instant travel you have, the more the metagame globalizes. Alliances instead of just being regional conflicts involve the entire game. You start having entire server sieges for no reason. The metagame starts breaking down. The high-end players can pretty much just control the server. And so the thing is, I'd say, is that globalization or the global banking isn't so much the problem as is the massive instant travel. That they removed the the city portals, which is really nice. It's big because it makes it so that you know clans have a harder time controlling a million holdings on the map. That they have to have holdings closer to each other. But I still say that one of the big offenders is house recall. That you know it, it's very hard to. The thing is like what's the cities in the game have such little value. Monetarily, there's not much value. So the main thing is like regional control. But when players can have these houses all over the map and they can just fucking teleport to them whenever they want, it pretty much negates any ability to have regional control because you can kill someone as unlimited times, but if they're living on Ruby and you're living on Karen, there's nothing you can do to stop them from regearing. And so in the hopes of getting cities to be worth anything, and of making the metagame, worthwhile to preserve a healthy population and stuff like that, and to reduce the impact of exploits. I think the a lot of this instant travel is what needs to be focused on and removed from the game.
It removing instant travel and regionalizing bankings is, and honestly, from a coding standpoint, probably easier than what they're trying to do. They're attaching cities, or rather villages, to cities and giving them gold rewards that instantly gets put into the bank and like all these clan point things and like other stuff. It's like cheesy Mickey Mouse kind of stuff that they're putting into the game in order to force things to have meaning when they could just be like, okay, we're gonna have this really awesome mob spawn that's like, 5-minute mount ride over here, and there's 3 cities. Go for it.
Right. Okay. So it sounds to me, and it does make sense that you're linking the instant travel with the banking system. But just for a moment here, so I could sort of separate the two and understand where you would naturally fall on this topic. Let's say that all of this instant travel was eliminated. The only way to get around was on foot or on mount. Would you prefer in a game like Darkfall? Once again, we're removing all the teleportation options, whether it's a geez, what do you call them? A warp point? Fuck, my mind is skippy right now. So anyway, remove all the teleportation options. You can't recall home. You can't recall anywhere. Everything is on mount or foot.
Well, keep let's say for all purposes the house recalls in the game, just because like without it, the game would be. Or let's say that you can recall to your city, because if not, then the game would be flat out retarded. Like it'd just be too big of a pain. But yeah, I assume we're assuming that if city recalls in the game and everything else is removed, would we prefer regional banking, local banking, or full global?
Yes.
Uh, Prior to the removal of chaos cities, I'd say that a regional system would have been best. Um, However, with chaos cities removed, I think that you almost have to have the global. Thing is,
I don't think
go ahead,
I
Zephyr.
don't think that you have to remove all forms of instant travel. It just has to be, even with a regional banking or even a local banking system, because if you remove all the forms of instant travel and teleportation or whatever, and you have that kind of system in, you're going to add time sink into the game. And if it's one thing that players don't like is being forced to do something that takes up their time while they're playing, that's not fun. So I don't think they need to remove everything. I'm gonna agree with Zaffax that the fucking house recall probably shouldn't have been in the game, especially with the ability to invite anybody you want to your house and then just kick them.
Let me address one point because I think Zephyr picked up on something I think is a common misconception. A lot of people in this game, there've been forum fights on the forums for years concerning our regional banking, but I think one of the common misconceptions is that if you have less instant travel in the game, that there's less PvP, and it's going to take longer to find PvP and stuff like that. But the thing is like, if you look at, things in like the totality of and everything, and you look at the metagame, you look how the game's going to play out and stuff like that, the regional banking, or the less instant travel, uh, it allows for the politics to stay more local. It slows the politics of the game down, so you don't have as many people getting wiped out constantly. Which basically means the population is to be higher, because let's face it, when you have a full loot game where you can lose your cities and stuff like that, the majority of players are still going to quit, uh, when they lose. And so the thing is, like, when you slow the politics down, in many ways, not only does it help, trading and stuff like that, but it also keeps the population up. And so, one of the reasons why more and more instant travel kept having to be added to the games, because every time you added instant travel, it made the factors be able to wipe more and more people out quicker and quicker. And so, by removing a lot of that instant travel, you actually are going to make it harder for the powerhouses to wipe people out. You're going to give people more of a chance to catch up, and the population is going to be higher, so there's going to be more PvP.
All right, let me understand this. So, are you asserting that if you slow politics down via limiting instant travel, that this would improve the health of the game? I just kind of want to nail that down. Is that your basic assertion here?
The thing is like, you don't. The main thing is globalization, right? Because globalization is one of the things that kills the game. Because a lot of it, a lot of the reason why the politics is healthy and active and fun to play and that stuff happens in the game is because there's still a sense of mystery. Like not everyone knows everyone on a first name basis. Not every there's trust issues and everything else. There's still a certain threshold of population. But as people start getting wiped out, the number of factions in the game heavily decreases. And when it gets to the point where everyone knows everyone, you start having all these knuck up alliances, people not attacking each other, and it really gets hard for any type of sieging and stuff like that to happen. So on the big siege scale, the the slower, less globalized politics is definitely huge. But even on the small scale, just I go send out 10 guys or 5 guys or maybe just myself to go find some PvP.
Okay, I want to challenge this though.
The
If you don't mind, let me interject for just a moment. I'm not saying I'm right here, but let's go back to EU when Hyperion was rolling the entire east of Aegon. We did not have teleportation channels installed at that point in time. I also believe we didn't have house recall. Did we even have houses at that time, let alone house recall? Yet the politics were very global, and you had
what time period is it again? I missed the I
EU.
missed the start of what you were saying.
EU, early EU with
Yeah,
the
what time?
Hyperion Horde. Hyperion Horde.
Okay.
Okay, we didn't have teleportation chambers. I'm not even sure if we had houses at that time. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there weren't house recalls. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like there weren't. But despite the house part, we definitely didn't have teleportation chambers, 100%. Yet the politics.
Runestones weren't big, Nexus weren't big, and houses weren't in the game.
Okay, so there
So
you
the
go.
only instant travel was the city recall.
Okay, that's all we
And
had.
the ability, well, and the exploit of kicking people to different cities to get them there quicker.
Oh yeah.
Forgot about that one. That's a good point. But just talk about slowing down politics by reducing this instant travel. Were people even doing the bind kick at that point? Xpiher, where when Hyperion
Yes.
was. Oh, they were.
Yes.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was very small. It was probably the Mercs and like one or two other clans that figured it out. But a lot of the early game was all based around Formfall. It was, I'm going to control this region, we're going to start up from here, and we're going to try to take over the world. And everybody had their own little idea. LOD played basically Risk and took Niflheim. Hyperion always wanted to control all of human lands. That was their Hyperion thing. There was, what was it, Dusk, I want to say? The all Alfar nation, they wanted to control Rubia and southern Alfar land.
And
Thing is,
The
like,
entire
there was constant PvP in that time, though. Like, that's what I'm a little confused on. Because I remember I lived on Yassam early in the game, and Yassam, there was constant PvP. Niflheim, you had the whole Deceit versus Death Wars. Even after Hyperion pretty much wiped those people out, and the Deceit Death Wars were finished. I mean, you had constant wars with the coalition, or fighting with the coalition and Hyperion. Like, I'm not seeing this lack of PvP.
right, so I guess all I'm saying is that we didn't have all this instant teleportation happening all over the map. Yet the politics were still, I don't know, they still seemed very vast. I can't quite say globalized, but when we do look at it from the perspective of what territory Hyperion controlled, they had a huge amount of land and not all this teleportation. So I'm just wondering how much of a difference does this really make, considering your statement about slowing down
Well, I think
politics.
that the banking. Well, the thing is like if you change the banking system, it's going to slow it down even more. But I think the globalization is a huge thing as well. The thing is I guess to kind of make the point is that I remember when Hyperion sieged VG for the second time. Like VG literally blew their own fucking bank up. Like they destroyed their own bank and deleted it from the city so that Hyperion couldn't use it. The thing is like, unfortunately, I had to get on the banking topic, but because of how the uh, the banking worked, you know, uh, it was very easy for people to travel a long way and to control our land. The thing is that one thing I'd say is that at the beginning of the game, you had the whole one city siege rule. So you could only siege one holding at a time, and you had a lot of self-sieging and stuff like that. So, it was possible for people to hold a lot of land. But when you got rid of the one city siege rule, and you get rid of self-sieging and stuff like that, and you return the there's no chaos cities, and you get rid of the instant travel. Uh, I don't think that you're going to have very uh, instant metagame per se. It's not going to be that global. I mean, yeah, things got a little global at the beginning because as a natural state of things, people I ally someone, you ally someone, I ally someone again, and back and forth. But if you notice, after Hyperion and the coalition, like all those global politics, like were starting to completely break down. Like even the coalition was falling apart in between, like within itself. Hyperion was falling apart from within. Like that stuff can't be maintained. Like you can't maintain those coalitions forever. And so I think that had the mercs not duped and had the NA server not been announced, I think you would have seen a much more. I think the politics would return local again, and in several ways it did.
Yeah, there was the interim wars after Hyperion fell and before Afghan took out uh, COTC, where it was pretty much all local. Ghost was on Rubiet. They helped COTC take out the remains of Dusk, and then Cactus got formed, and
Well, even look at Hyperion, right? You had Kier Dane break off and say like, "Fuck it, we're going to YC." Like the global politics, Hyperion tried playing this big game of server conquest, but it just can't be maintained. Not on the type of that type of transportation system. And I think Hyperion's a perfect example. Same with the coalition of what happens when you don't have massive instant travel. Like the coalition had holdings all the way ranging from Kolesh, Khazgar, uh, Marshall, Andruk, Sweetwater, etc. And what happened? Like it got completely annihilated. The holdings were too far apart. They couldn't be defended. When it took 45 minutes to travel from one side of the empire to the other, like it just didn't work. And that's what you want to see. You don't want these super alliances to be able to travel all over the place. Like what would have happened had instant travel of today? Like with the city chambers, with the mass rune stones and house recalls and everything else. What would have happened had Hyperion had those resources, right? Like they would have wiped out far more population than they ever did, and they would have had near the trouble they had controlling the people. Like it's one thing to say like, oh, Hyperion like went and attacked a bunch of people, so like that proves that instant travel doesn't do anything. But then like take it from the reverse and say, what if there was the massive instant travel? And I think everyone would agree that Hyperion or the Coalition or someone else would have done significantly more damage to the server than what they did during their stay.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point and one to ponder for sure. With that, let's actually move firmly into the early DFO political history. This is one of the talking points that Xpiher brought up that we should discuss. So I'm going to let Xpiher start it off, and maybe you want to just continue to flow off where Zaffa left off, or maybe go even a little further back and take us from the beginning on the various political topics that you want to discuss in terms of Aegon's history.
Zaffax, go ahead and interject anytime you really feel like it, because I believe we have two different perspectives on it since you were in
Yeah,
Master
we have pretty significant, so I'll
VG.
let you say your case and then I'll say the real story.
Okay, guy. But let's see where to start. Shit, I don't even know where to start, man.
I guess you kind of have to start on the subcontinents, right, going into the game. That, at the beginning, each of the subcontinents had their own factional wars. You had Death Deceit, which is a big conflict on
Yeah,
Niflheim. That was between Harm and Elodie, which the goons got involved in. You had Yassam, where you had YC and Stasis, which
Stasis is pretty funny.
the thing is, like, Yassam was just such, it was so unfortunate because going into Darkfall, one thing you got to understand for the politics is that at the time, AV had announced a few things. One, they said that House Recall wasn't going to be, or the City Recall was going to be removed, which it wasn't, but they also said that there were going to be ARAC penalties. So they said there were going to be penalties for if you had clans of members of different races, your clan was going to be punished. And so for a number of these continents, you had people like go all one race. So like Rubiot went all Alfar, or VG went all human, elf, dwarf. And so a lot of these uh, clans didn't get near the recruitment they would have otherwise. And then, so at the beginning for say Yassam, it's pretty much everyone against COTP, Coalition, or Covenant of the Phoenix. And then once people realized that ARAC was a complete joke, that broke down, and VG allied COTP and went to war against the rest of the continent. You had Cairn, which you pretty much had Blood, Sun, LATD, and then some other fool that no one remembers. But Blood and Sun pretty much kicked the two other people off the continent almost immediately and took over that. And then Rubiot, you had
Wasn't it Covert Ops?
Dusk Alliance. Covered ops for what?
The clan that got kicked off of the little tiny
No, they weren't
island.
the owner of the of Iskin. No.
Oh, okay.
But in any case, you had these regional wars going on, and at the time you had Hyperion on the main continent. You had Savage, who was supposed to be going into the game like the opponent of Hyperion, though it completely fell apart. And then you had AC, which really were a bunch of nobodies, but they were putting their hands all over the place. So they assisted in Niflheim, and were pretty much the reason why Deceit, Harm's Alliance was defeated. And so, Death took over the continent. Via Somme, Hyperion intervened, and thanks to a lot of really broken game mechanics, took over the continent. And so the main powerhouses you ended up having were Hyperion, who pretty much controlled Yassam, and Humanlands. You had Death, which controlled Niflheim. You had Dusk, a completely useless alliance on Rubiot. And you had Cairn Alliance, which was Sun and Blood. Well, the thing is, Hyperion went in to attack like a bazillion people, and as a result, people really didn't have a place to live, and so they willingly joined up with Gluttony, who was running Awful Company, and formed the Coalition of the Phoenix, or the Coalition of the Chillin. And I know a lot of people don't always remember this, but there was like a 1 month Cold War between Hyperion and the Coalition when nothing really happened. But eventually the
Yeah.
Coalition ended up getting up to upwards of 2,000 people, and going to war with Hyperion. The game was played with a bunch of server crashes and instability and everything else. But basically in the end of it, the Coalition won out. Hyperion was wiped out, and the game lost about a third of its population.
Real quick, let me interject a question here. When the Coalition first engaged Hyperion after the Cold War, and I'm looking at the Darkfall political map right now, what was the first city? Where was the first shot fired? And also, where was the Coalition hanging out for the most part? I know it was a collection of guilds, of course, but what territory did they
It
control?
was completely out of Marshall. Thing is like the Coalition had Marshall, and then they got Khazgar with I think KGB owned. You ended up having Kolesh, so you had Marshall, Kolesh, Khazgar. The first major city that was taken of Hyperion was probably well, you had a few sieges here and there, but Aputan, or not Aputan, Andric was the 100 city, and it was a huge win for the Coalition. You had a siege against Alberworth that was supposed to be really big. I think it was the day when you had like 3 or 4 sieges against Hyperion. The Coalition won 2 of them. Would have won Alberworth, but the server crashed. And once that happened, Puerto Welton, the owners of Alberworth, pretty much moved to Kia over on Yassam. Pretty much gave it free reign for Cairn Alliance to go and take the city. And then, it was really blatant. The Hyperion Alliance is getting completely crushed. Both internally, they were having a bunch of internal fighting because man just wasn't playing the game at all. And, the Alliance was really falling to pieces because of how centralized it was. So you had a bunch of internal fighting. You had a bunch of losses as far as the propaganda game on the forums. As Xpiher said, the forums were huge at the beginning. And, the thing is, and this is one of the reasons why the global, or the instant travel is such a big deal. It's because there was little instant travel in the game. When the Coalition would go and siege like 4 holdings, Hyperion would have to make a conscious decision of who do we defend. And at the end of the day, it was always the main clans, like the Hundreds, or Wessex, or Puerto Welton that would be defended. And all the small clans that own like hamlets and stuff like that would be lost. And they would basically be told they couldn't defend their own holdings. And it just led to so much internal strife within the alliance that it pretty much just exploded. and they end up having to capitulate to death.
Yeah, a lot of the internal Hyperion strife was caused by them every clan essentially wanting its own holding. A lot of internal strife actually from for any alliance was that issue.
And the coalition was the same way. Like the coalition was having huge internal fighting. Like a lot of the time, people weren't even sure if it was going to make it to the end of the war with Hyperion because they thought it was going to explode by then. But as soon as Hyperion was beaten, people realized they were in a really bad spot because prior to Hyperion being destroyed, a bunch of holdings were exchanging hands, and the coalition realized because they weren't stupid. Like they knew as soon as the Hyperion went away that they'd be the next target, and so they tried like letting Death get free holdings. They tried letting Karen gobble up holdings. The coalition actually took very few of the holdings that Hyperion had for itself, but it didn't fucking matter. Like as soon as Hyperion was taken out, Death, Cairn, and the Mercs, who had extremely overleveled characters thanks to dupes, all war decked the coalition, and between the ridiculous internal fighting, I mean, people wouldn't even show up for sieges, uh, and the sheer disadvantages. I mean, the thing is, like, coalition was completely bankrupt by the time it finished its war with Hyperion, and so it wasn't very long before the coalition itself like completely exploded. And then you talk about, well, things were so global. Well, that's when things started becoming more localized. The problem
Wasn't
is that
wasn't the coalition,
go ahead.
and I got to ask this because I'm trying to discern a difference between the leadership and organization of Hyperion as we understand it, as opposed to the coalition. Wasn't the coalition comprised of a lot of people with bigger egos looking out for themselves, their own little sub guilds, as opposed to Hyperion, which originally was very centralized, as you mentioned?
All right. So Hyperion was like this centralized vision of you had these people. Well, the core of Hyperion was this centralized vision going into the game where they went to take over human lens and then run their own little RP session or whatever else. But the coalition, and the Hyperion also had a bunch of clans. They pretty much said join or die, and pretty much everyone joined Hyperion and then pay taxes. But the uh, the coalition was pretty much just a uh, a refugee camp of people that Hyperion had destroyed. Like you had a bunch of egos running the alliance, but it's really no different than any other guild of the game at the time. But the thing is, like, Hyperion was united under like a common ideal, you could say, while the coalition was really just a bunch of people who, the only reason they worked with them was because people were so pissed off with Hyperion, or because they thought they could gain
Yes.
something from it. And so when Hyperion was defeated, which was really the only thing that kept the coalition together, that's when you start having people like Mahitza Turret, who had been in the coalition, pretty much since VG joined, uh, was planning on sieging Hyperion or the coalition. You had a lot of people defecting. I mean, the thing was, it's like the coalition pretty much collapsed the same day that Hyperion did. I mean, there was nothing that was gonna keep that alliance together. The only thing that could have saved the coalition was right after Hyperion collapsed, Gluttony sent out a notice saying, you know, anyone who works with Hyperion has like 3 hours or 3 days to respond, saying that you will never work with them again, or else like we'll go to war with you. Which fucking, a lot of these smaller clients would never notice, a single post. It wasn't even like the first page. It was like in the middle of a thread. And so, Bloodfest, the owners of Sweetwater, because VG still needed a holding and it was one of the main guilds in the coalition, so it was like, it's gonna happen. But Bloodfest ended up getting sieged, having their holding taken after 2 sieges. And then that holding had been originally owned by Shadow Syndicate when Hyperion had gone on its initial rampage, and Shadow Syndicate had since joined the Cairn Alliance. And so Cairn sieged Takia, the original holding of VG, completely blew everything up for no fucking reason, and said, "All right, we like to trade. We'll give you Takia in exchange for Sweetwater." And what the coalition could have done is said, deal, we'll take the trade and just move the whole coalition to Takia and then rebuilt there. But instead, Wolflow, the person who was running VG at the time, was a fucking idiot, decided to keep Sweetwater. Gluttony was also on this whole idea of let's just move everyone to Marshall, and the opportunity was missed, and that's kind of what caused Karen to go to war with the coalition to begin with. But really, that whole thing could have been avoided had that trade gone through, because the coalition still had enough core people that could have worked together to take over Yassam, and they would have been far enough away that the even the high-end characters of the Mercs couldn't do any damage because they'd be too far from them.
Now you were in
But
Vamp.
the beginning of the game was full.
Were you in Vamp at
No,
this
I was
time?
with VJ.
That's way later.
Okay, so was Vamp even involved
The,
in the game at this point, even on a smaller scale? Were they Vamp?
As far as all these conflicts were concerned, Vamp really didn't play a role.
yeah,
Thing is, you had some conflicts on the west side of the map. So, like after Dusk was like destroyed by the Mercs in like 5 days, which is really entertaining considering that you know like everyone in the game is at war with each other, and here you have Dust sitting on this continent doing literally nothing. They're just sitting there, basically frolicking about, and you have the Mercs bring a single brig, one ship over to them, and their entire alliance like falls apart in 5 days. Like I mean, it was absolutely hilarious how quickly they turned on each other, and so you ended up having Cactus and Dawn come out of it. Cactus ended up winning that struggle, but you had a few things going on the west side of the map, but as far as the bigger picture goes, the west side of the map has really never played any significant role as far as Darkfall is concerned. Like anything west of Marshall has pretty much been inconsequential.
Right, and this might be. Oh, this would be NA. Forget it. Never mind. I was just gonna skip ahead to Sinister, and because I know they control the Northwest, but that's irrelevant at this point. So then, after the fall of Hyperion, and then we had the fall of the breakup of the coalition. The way I remember it, and things kind of run together in my mind for this history. So I am absolutely shocked at how well you remember this. I mean, it's fucking nutty. You're calling out cities and precise trades and movements and stuff like that. So correct me when I make mistakes here, but after everything fell apart, after the big war there, is that when Sun began to rise on Cairn?
yes.
Well, the thing
Well,
is, Sun, most of Sun's holdings were pretty much already gained by, while COTP was fighting Hyperion, or the coalition, the channel was fighting Hyperion, because, as I said before, the COTC really didn't want to become the server villain. Like they tried, but there was really nothing they could do. So Cairn got a bunch of free holdings. But the thing was, you know, you ended up having a little bit of fight between Death and the Mercs and stuff like that. But one of the things that really screwed up the metagame was AV ending up announcing the NA server. Even before the NA server was
yes, terrible.
launched, they said, "Oh, the NA server's coming up, and we're not having transfers at launch, but maybe sometime down the road." And that's when the metagame like completely like self-destructed because it was like, why bother? Like everyone was aware of how you know uh, of how exploited the server was, and so people were
En-
hoping for a fresh start. A lot of people didn't think that AV
Entire
would be
clans
stupid
quit.
enough. Yeah, AV didn't think people didn't think that AV would be dumb enough to allow full transfers to the NA server, and so a lot of people quit until the NA server happened, and so you had this jumbled up politics. Karen took advantage of it because when the NA server finally did open, as far as big powers were concerned, they were the only one left on the server. Death, Sinister left. Most people that had been in the COTC left to the NA server. I mean, there was really no one left except for maybe Vamp, a few Afghan, etc. But the EU server, as far as the old politics were concerned, completely blew up.
And would you say
Everything
as
went
a result that's
completely
how
to shit.
Sun was able to rise to power?
Sun, yes and no. Sun played a pretty decent political game, but they did it mainly by staying out of the two major wars. They jumped in. They were very France, I guess, would be the best description. They jumped in when there was a victory, and they jumped in when there was a sure victory, and kind of stayed out of everything else after taking control of Cairn.
I mean, as far as the big alliances go, Karen was kind of viewed as like the weakest of them as far as the big factors are concerned. Back when you had COTC, Death, Hyperion, all this different people, I mean, Karen was kind of seen as a joke, and
Yeah.
you know, they pretty much won by playing the waiting game and then taking advantage of the NA server announcement and everyone leaving the server except for them.
This brings to mind a question that I have. It was sort of something I solicited in the Darkfall forums, and it is funny, but I do always wonder about this. Sun, they did grow powerful and strong, as far as I know, and continue to grow stronger after everybody bailed from Europe. If we were all forced onto one server again, how do you think that would unfold? Do you think Sun, starting off fresh, would have the dynamic to pull together what they did before, or and just in general between NA and Euros, who are the better clans? I mean, this is kind of a big question. That's why I'm, my brain's skipping about a bit. But essentially, who are the better clans? Is that even a fair question to ask? Have we seen better organization
It
between the two servers, or is it pretty much a toss-up?
it doesn't matter because if we're all forced on the one server, everyone has to have 24-hour coverage or else they're gonna get fucked.
Right. So what I'm
I
really
think that
asking here is NA clan organization versus EU clan. Have you noticed any difference? And I'm asking a question that is at a level that I've not really played at or paid much attention to. When I would get on, I pay more attention to the small scale PvP, the small scale PvE collection, databasing stuff. Just what's going on in Alfar lands for the most part, and glancing at this political map that I have pulled up right now periodically. So personally, I don't have the insight. So I'm wondering if you guys have noticed, is there a distinct difference between the way Euros run their clans and how they grab land versus the North Americans, or is there really no difference and it's just solid players when they get together they'll take what they want?
I think they're completely different. No, the
I would say
metagame
this
between two
the
servers isn't even remotely the same. What? Go ahead, Cypher.
I was gonna say that they're different, but as far as strategy is concerned, not by much. I mean, there's only so many good strategies out there for a game like this, especially with the way the map's set up. But the way they're run, completely different.
So what are some of the different strategies that you guys have seen between the NAs and the Euros, and what are sort of some of the different ways the clans have been run that you've noticed different from NA versus EU?
I think the main thing you got to talk about is the different. I know people in the chat are getting a little pissed off because I've talked with him about this before, but I think the main thing that has to be brought up is just the sheer amount of mercs on the NA server compared to the EU server, and just what an integral role merking has played for the North Americans as opposed to the EU. The EU is much more in the traditional alliance-based empire building, much more as far as that's concerned, while the NA server has very big on mercs and defense agreements and contracting and stuff like that. That I'd say guild loyalty is a lot weaker on the NA server than it is on the EU server. The politics don't necessarily mean as much. That gold goes farther than clan resentments and stuff like that.
Is
Yeah, personal rivalries though definitely are seem to play a more role on NA than they do on EU.
As far as who's better though, I'd say the Americans. I mean, the thing is like, you know, I think that the just looking at like stuff like spy networks and propaganda and organization and stuff like that, I think that some of the NA clans have been more tested. The thing is, like, if you look at the old superpowers from the EU server, they're all on the NA server right now. And no, I'm not talking about Hyperion. I'm talking about like, you go look at a clan like Sinister or BKS, whose leadership has been around since the beginning, or Nemesis, or Blood, or any of these clans. Like, they've been around since the beginning. You know, they understood what the game was like under a high population, a medium population, a low population. They understand what it's like having. Uh, they were around on the EU server and understand the philosophy of the players there. They played on the NA server and learned the philosophy of players there. Like, they just they're far more experienced. Like, they've been through a whole lot more than I think the Europeans have, and as a result, they're much better at playing the political game. Now, I think that as far as the less than top NA clans, I guess you could call them the average clan or the less factor clans. I don't think there's terribly much of a difference. Uh, but I think as far as the top of the NA server versus the top of the EU server, I think the top of the NA wins hands down.
you agreeing with this, Xpiher?
Yeah, as organizational wise, yeah, NA definitely had it better. We just every single clan just I don't know.
All right, now something that we were talking about earlier. I was talking to Zaffax about this before you joined the channel, and he was going into a little bit of the history on BKS. I found it interesting and just like this layered cake of involvement from different guild leaders and factions within factions. Zaffax, can you go into some of that? Tell us about the real BKS, where they came from,
I
and
don't
how
know a
that
little
guild
bit because
really
you
evolved.
asked, but I don't want to go. Yeah, I don't want to go too much into the clans, but I'll go into it for a little bit, and that is that you know, you, when the Darkfall and Holy Wars was announced and stuff like that, you've had a lot of discussion of like who are the real winners of the game or who are the real comeback stories. And I gotta give my respect to Raid and Van because I think that they're among definitely the top comebacks. But the thing is, when people say BKS, I think that at least I know when I'm talking about it, I'm talking about the leadership. I'm talking about the people that were there from the beginning and not the people that came in like at the back end. So like people like Screwloose, I'm sorry, but you're just not part of that group. But as far as Raid and Van goes, I mean they went from you know being in VG, same clan as myself and Nemesis, but they went from basically being on the bottom of the totem pole on the EU server, starting up a clan on the NA server, where they weren't elitists at the start. They pretty much said that any VG can join for 2 weeks or whatever it was, and built a very strong clan out of it and did merking stuff. So as I said before, Nemesis and BKS don't agree for a number of reasons, but I think that BKS is definitely a pretty prime example of a clan that's overcome. But with that being said, again, BKS is there's more than one BKS. I mean, you had the BKS that Raid and Vanadar ran, the one that I would say is the comeback story. You had, but they were very neutral. You had, but then when they left, you had Lokius take over, and you had a much more politicized BKS. Personally, I thought it was more entertaining BKS. And then when he shut down the clan, and Raid and Van were gone, you had Zealot. I mean, you've had a number of different BKSs, but I really don't. Again, I don't want to say too terribly much on another person's clan, but props to Raid and Van.
Okay, now APOC is saying that Lokius, his leadership in the clan was a huge reason for its success. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I completely agree. As I said before, I thought that I think that Raid and Van set the foundations, but I think it was Lokius who really brought it into the metagame. Thing was is that a lot of the foundations were set by Raid and Van, and so much that obviously they started the clan, they started the merking stuff, they started getting a lot of the better players in their clan, stuff like that. They really weren't political. Like they really didn't want to be political at all, because Nemesis and BKS were initially going to work together when Nemesis transferred, but because of disagreements on a player level, but also disagreements on a political level. They just had different priorities. Like BKS wanted to stay in Marshall, stay very neutral, and do merking stuff and just not be attacked. While Nemesis is like, fuck that. Like we have the resources. Like let's make the game fun and like attack people. Like even if we lose, like it's better to do something than just sit on our resources. Like 99% of the server. But when they left and Lokius took over, Lokius was very big as far as getting him into the political game. He started doing renewing the contracting stuff. I think potentially to a better level than Raiden Van did. Uh, was political with blood, assisted in sieging of Karen and Newbie Down and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely say that a lot of the success that BKS members take credit for was done by Lokius, and that's why I said that there's different BKSs, right? Because it's the same tag, but different leaders were in charge, different members were there, and it seems like BKS, like a number of other clans in this game, try to take credit for stuff that they weren't necessarily a part of.
Do you know if we're going to see Lokius show up in UW?
I don't know. I doubt it, but you never know. I I I think that BKS still holds a bit of a grudge against him because he did kind of steal their clan tag and shut the clan down.
Okay, so other Darkfall history. Now, Xpiher, you have been almost silent on this, and understandably so, because Zaffax is a fucking encyclopedia. I mean, just siege to siege, you've got it down. You're like the Rain Man of Darkfall knowledge or history, Arcana. How about you, Xpiher? Are there any other political events that you think really shaped the Egonian landscape?
Zaffax, man, you had this down packed. I cannot even compete. It's not no question asked about that. I don't that really shaped Aegon? Not really. The interim wars between the two world wars, uh, those were entertaining. But as Zaffax said, they weren't really major. It was more like a winding down type of thing. Some of the lesser known clans that weren't huge players during the either World War were just trying to build up. You had Ghost Alliance that was on the southwestern part of Rubiet. I don't remember city names. I'm sorry, but there was the whole between them and Dusk. Dusk got pushed off. Uh, Ghost helped out COTC with a siege a couple of times. Then the forums blew up when the server crashed 2 minutes after the siege happened, and there was a rollback.
Oh yeah,
That was funny.
I forgot about that. How how did you guys feel about that at the time?
I think Zavex weren't we on the same page on that one?
Say it one more time.
When the
I heard.
was
I mean, you talked about a rollback siege. Which one?
the it was on Rubiet. It was after the first major world war. COTC won the siege. They won the holding, and then 2 minutes later, the
Yeah, and
server
the server
crashed when they
crashed,
came
and they
back up.
finally gave the holding back to Exile.
Yeah, the server crashed. The holding was transferred back to the defenders because of the rollback, and then the next day on server up, the holding went to COTC.
I thought it was really odd that they did it for that specific siege when there were so many sieges in the game that they should have done it on. I mean, Savage Alliance pretty much exploded because every time they did a siege, the server crashed or something
Yes.
else, and they never got their wagers back. AV was just like, sorry, fuck you, like you're just screwed. And look at VG. I mean, VG beat Hyperion twice on sieges in Takia, lost anyways because the fucking server sieged him again. Server crashed.
Yeah, I remember those.
There were sieges on Metatil. City couldn't be taken. I mean, VG siege Bay couldn't be taken. I mean, you had the siege on Alba where server crashed. No rollback there. Hyperion had some stuff. I mean, it was just there were so many sieges that AV just never cared about. So it was just really odd that the siege that really was pretty inconsequential and didn't matter uh, was done. I think the reason they gave was that it official that they had won, that
It
the
was
system
official.
message was official. So
It
they're
was
like,
official, and it was like
we know
literally a
that
minute
you
later.
may have lost your holding because of, yeah, but the thing is like, how did Hyperion take Takia in the first place, right? I mean, VG won. They took the fucking Hamlet, and the first one they killed the shard carrier. But would they ever given mercy? No. I think it was just that by that point that people were so fed up with the server crashes and so fed up with AV's incompetence as far as siege handling goes that they're finally just reversed that single siege to say, see guys, we care, even though like the metagame was already completely screwed up at that point.
Yeah.
What should they do? Should they just hand back the wagers or actually make the transfer happen?
Well, the thing is
Well, it depends on when in the siege the server crashed. A lot of the ones that Zafax was mentioning was that happened mid siege, and it was still with shard carriers and everything like that. So I guess the only fair thing to do in that situation would be to hand the wagers back and just make it like the siege was never happened. But with a definitive conclusion, I think it would the only fair way to do in that situation would be to give it to whoever was the winner.
yeah, but you had a number of sieges that they were definitive, they just went the other way. So obviously you want to see a system message. It's like again, I talked about Takia because I think it was one. You had that and you had Orcs of Rust City. That was the same result. But with Orcs of Rust and VG, like both of them lost their holdings because sieges were unwinnable. So were unending. So even if you killed the shard carrier, even if you took the wagered holdings, like even if you did everything that was supposed to be done to win the siege, it didn't matter. Like you still couldn't end the siege. And so you talk about, why did the game globalize as much as it did? Well, the truth is, like, it never would have because Hyperion never would have been able to take Yasam in the first place. They never would have taken Orcs the rest of the city. Like, they wouldn't have taken a lot of these holdings. Because what happened when Hyperion went to Yasam? Their holding that they wagered got taken. What happened with the EU shard carriers? He got killed. Like the the globalized politics did not work at launch. The only reason they worked at all for the period of time they did was because the game was horribly broken, and so people just couldn't whether it be from server crashes or just flat out, even if you do what you're supposed to do, they still win. I mean, it was just DF1 on EU was just horribly broken.
Are
Yeah, I
there
have no argument with that one.
now, real quick, in the chat, we've got Edekin saying that the history is incorrect. Edekin and Wretch. So, do you know what he's saying? I mean, Xpiher, you're coming up here and you're defending the
Yeah,
history that's been presented. What could he be contesting you with here?
he's pissed off because he and Six are in Mumble together right now probably, and they're probably upset that Solar Raider isn't being brought up. But honestly speaking, Solar Raider, just like Stasis after VG left, really weren't major factors so far as the global political game were concerned. And when you have side stories, all the time, so you could almost it's like Stasis first Cactus, or Cactus first Dawn or whoever. Like they were stories and they're important to the people that were involved in them. But as far as the top level of the metagame, like it just wasn't really that big of a deal.
Yeah,
It's probably what they're
I
talking
agree with
about.
that. I was involved in both of those, Stasis, and it wasn't what Stasis broke up. New leadership was elected and everything else, and a couple of the clans split off and made Ghost for Rubiet. But yeah, it wasn't the cream of the crop, so to speak.
Earlier, you had mentioned that the European metagame and everything was sort of destroyed after the announcement of the NA servers. And APOC just asked something in the chat channel that I actually had earlier, and it slipped my mind. So I'm glad he mentioned it. With UW, the plan is you will get a character on both the NA and EU server now that they have a different publishing program happening here. So, do you guys think that you'll see EU players and NA players playing on both servers to defend cities for sister clans since they can have characters on both? How do you think that's going to unfold?
Potentially, I think we'll have a more of a refugee problem though, where people lose and then they get all butthurt and try to reestablish themselves on the other server.
I'd agree with that. I don't think that as far as practical sense, like I'm not sure if you're gonna really be helped much by it. I mean, I've heard a few people say like isn't it gonna be cool like having American and EU clans work together and they're gonna work on both servers and everything else? But the thing is, like, I don't think it's ever gonna be as efficient as just devoting all your resources to your server. I mean, the thing is like if someone, if your main server is a North American server and someone else servers the EU server, and you have the EU people come in, these are people you don't work with on a daily basis. They're not people who really have that much to lose. So, even if they lose a siege, big deal. Their bank and their cities are on the other server. I mean, the thing is that it's just not. It just won't be as important to the people of the other server. And so I really don't think you'll see this reliance. And besides, like, even the people that do try to bring in like people from the other server, I'd almost wonder if you're gonna have a reputation build up, similar to server up asset destruction. It's like, oh, you're one of those people that bring in other servers to Zerg. Like, it's not enough to like rely on your own server. You're literally going to the other server. So I think it's going to be
Yeah.
viewed very negatively. And the only thing you're going to see out of it is the refugee problem, as Cypher said, where, if someone loses, they'll just go run to the other server. I don't think it's, I think it's kind of a bad option. I mean, the thing that was nice about the $15 cost was that it made it so that less people are willing to pay the fee to switch. They were kind of stuck on their server. Now, did that hurt the population of the game overall? Who knows? But at least it kept the metagame more consistent.
And not only that, I mean, look at the alliances that were built up that actually included both North American and European players. They fell apart all the time. There was either cultural differences or mistranslation or somebody just like stepped on somebody else's toes, and they would just explode. They not typically get along. Like, okay, with Ghost for instance, this is just a little side story of one of the ones Zaffax was talking about. Ghost blew up prior to the announcement of the NA server because I want to say it was Bloodfest or I don't know, was one of so I terrible remembering names from that long ago, but one of them had a hamlet, and they just wanted their own little hamlet and stay out there. And we called them in to help us, and they just refused. A couple days later, it became more and more an issue, and so eventually they just said, no, we're not going to show up anymore, and joined the other side that attacked us, just to push all the North American players from Rubiet.
Well, in the in the context of how this is going to be set up, though, I feel like I agree with the comment that Ponger Linus brought up. And by the way, the APOC question was actually he was reiterating what Ponger Linus says. But his reply, and this is what I was thinking. Maybe this is just too basic, and you guys are thinking a lot deeper about it. But for me, from the instant gratification end, he says if the game is no grind, as is allegedly AV's goal, okay, won't it make characters on another server? Basically, aren't people going to just chase the PvP? So since I can jump over to Europe and I'm not going to have to worry about grinding for a year before I'm viable, completely viable, and maybe just a month. Maybe I'll have a guy on the European server that's just ready to roll. And if NA is slow, whether I'm playing late at night or whatever, maybe I'll just jump over there to get a few kills. What do you guys think about that?
I don't think you'll see much of it. I mean, the thing is, you could have zero grind, but the thing is, you can only be in one place at a time. And that if they're sieging, you're going to end up having to pick one server over another as your main one. I mean, if you have holdings on both servers, you're going to have one as your main server. You're going to inevitably have to make the pick of, if both of them get sieged at the same time, which one do you end up defending? And, as soon as you start having decisions like that being made, I think it's pretty clear that, you are going to have a primary server. And that, as far as just switching over for quick action PvP and whatnot, there's always stuff you can be working on, whether it be more financial or, building ties with other alliances or something else. You know, if the population ever gets so bad that you literally have to switch the other server to get any PvP, I think that that's a problem in itself, and I think that's let's hope it doesn't get to that point.
And why would someone switch over servers unless their time zones, like where they normally work, changes? I mean, there's going to be more people playing on your time zone than the other server. It doesn't make sense to hop over and try to get some easy kills. It's not going to happen. There's not going to be enough people.
Well, if I'm playing late at night, very late at night, then that would be daytime for Europe. So I will find a larger population. But I think that maybe where Ponger Linus and I are coming from, it's probably rather shallow, and it's more or less we're thinking about the current or the ending state of Darkfall, which wasn't experiencing high player populations. And so if you want to find some action, wherever it's consolidating at, if you have access to both servers, then naturally one might travel there. So I think just from a population standpoint, that's probably where we're coming from. Like I said, you guys are thinking about this on a different level. So it's nice to exchange your opinions and find out what other people are thinking on this. Going back to the political history of Darkfall, I sort of want to wrap this up, and I know there's a lot, but as noted earlier, we have a time constraint, and I definitely want to try to hit up all these Xpiher points. So is there any other relevant to the Darkfall, any other relevant history to Darkfall that we should not overlook before continuing on?
I mean, I think it's kind of better not to get caught up too much in the history. I mean, the thing is like there's interesting things you can learn as far as what people are going to do and how much you can trust people and planning and stuff. But I don't think it's more or less a side story. That's it's an interesting history, but as far as how much it's going to be useful for DF2, I think that's one of those things of you got to have a lot of knowledge of which leaders can you trust, like who backstabs their members, like who does this and that, and you can never fit that in a
Do you
3 hour
want
podcast.
to do you want to call out any character profiles right now? You just mentioned you can use the history to determine, what sort of moves a certain clan leader will make. Do you have a few profiles you can give us, how you're expecting them to act, or would that be more or less violating your
Well,
guild
I mean, I'll
strategy?
give an example. Like, no, I mean, like, take Manus for example. Who's running Hyperion and claims to be coming back and stuff like that. I mean, no offense, but the guy's kind of like a loose cannon a bit. That it's clearly not built around long-term planning. He does stuff that's like not sustainable and doesn't necessarily take in reality of the situation. And so, when you look at a person like that, you know that, as far as an alliance is concerned, that's not the type of person you want to ally with. Like, that's not the type of person that you want to establish heavy ties with, because you know they're not going to have your back in the end.
Yeah,
Well,
it's more the whole is greater than the sum of the parts type thing.
I mean, as far as Manus goes, I was talking to him and very, very briefly and TeamSpeak the other day, and the guy couldn't name a single clan on the NA server, and yeah, he's going over to the NA server. And so it's like, okay, you know, when you have this person who basically does stuff that make no sense, who has no idea of the political situation at all, can't name a single clan, you know, it makes you wonder. It definitely doesn't. It's not. You only have so much political capital in the game, and that's not a location where it's best spent.
When you
Yeah, he's likely going to rely on others to do the research bit for him, I'm guessing.
behind the scenes, when you guys are preparing with your clans for UW, are you actually discussing the different guild leaders and sort of outlining a little profile on them and how you expect them to lead their clan in UW? Or are you pretty much just concentrating on your own internal organization and how you plan to rally the troops on day one?
No, you look at everything. I mean, you look at the different clan leaders. What type of internal strife's going in their clans, who their member base is. How are they going to react? If you do action A, what's going to be the result of it? Who can take what type of pressures? What leader's going to do what if the political situation is a certain way? If Clan A lives next to Clan B, is that better than had Clan C live there instead of Clan B? I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I don't want to get too technical.
Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting to consume an entire cast just calling out clan leaders and profiling them. Because there's a lot to it. There's a lot to this history, and a lot has been made. It's a very interesting topic. But moving on, Xpiher has a bunch of points here that he'd like to discuss, and the next point on the list is he noted that you and he have different form fall philosophies. So Xpirer, can you explain that?
Uh, I think it's more to along the lines of the fact that we were just involved in different stuff. Zaffax was obviously involved in a lot of the more deeper political metagame on the global scale or the higher echelon than I was, and I was more trying to, as people would say, one up my post count. That's not what I was doing all the time. I mean, it did get to the point where I just didn't care anymore. But um, no, I take a look at the game and I look at it from a political science standpoint. That's what I'm trained in. That's my passion in real life. So I look at it as a way to work those skills and do the analysis and everything. So I try to look at all points from every single position with as little bias as possible and try to find out exactly what happened. And from like a realist kind of perspective.
And so, would you say then that Zaffax has an unreal perspective and is tainting the truth, twisting it like a little bitch?
No, 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 no. A realist is a way that you look, as a way you look at what people do. It's game theory essentially. You look at why somebody does something. You look at the actions that people do and try to figure out why they did it, and then you try to go back through to your clan or whatever and be like, hey, if we do this, this person's likely to do this. So you can use it to kind of manipulate them in a way, or you can use it to predict how actions are going to go. It's not truth. It's just how people act.
And how do you feel about that, Zaffa? What side of the coin do you fall on? If that's how Expire analyzes and engages the forms, how do you engage the forms, or how is it truly different?
I take it like a forum. I mean, people make posts and everything else. I think people, try to, incite things from now and again. you know, there's different parts of the forums. I mean, you had the suggestion thing where, for a while it was pretty apparent that AV was launching a new game, even though a lot of people tried to deny it. So yeah, the suggestion part. And so, that was one part of it. I think that's one thing that Xipher and I shared as far as that section of the forums goes. Is trying to make some more of the more in-depth suggestions, not just like the game needs to be fixed or balanced, but exactly how do you do that? What is the very specific mechanic? And then you had the more political sections. So you had like the NA discussion or the EU discussion, stuff like that. And it takes it from what I understand, Xipher took it from more of a the observer standpoint of let me observe how people are acting and take what I will from it. Uh, Part of me was more or less just the trollier way of just have a bit of fun on the forums. The other part was you do have the political aspect of you know trying to spin a story a certain way. I mean the thing is that no one ever knows the full story, right? No one has enough time nor enough means to necessarily know everything that's happening. And a lot of times players don't have spies or stuff like that. They're really just looking from their own vantage point. And so you want to try to do what you can to control the information that's put out there to be favorable to you and to try to spin the stories as best as you can. So, I'd say it probably took a more active hand as far as the metagame was concerned with the forums than Xipher did. But, again, it's just a forum. I mean, I wouldn't look too much into it.
Says the man who plays the forum metagame hardcore. All right, Xpiher, by the way, real quick, other people have asked us in the chat, and in fact, before you signed on, I was talking to Zaffax about this. When I read your name, I say Xpiher. That's how I've been calling you. How do you pronounce your handle?
That's actually how I pronounce it. I noticed that somebody asked where the name came from or why it's misspelled. Final Fantasy XI was probably my favorite PvE MMO, and I rerolled my character. Problem was the name that I had was Xipher, and it was taken because I had just deleted the character. So I just made it this one.
Okay, so there's some
Just to
truth to
add on
calling
to
you
that, it
Cypher.
is Xipher.
A little bit, but I mean, I've used this handle for, God, 7 years. Almost 7 years.
Okay, so that's the story behind that. Now, also in one of your points, you said that you wanted to discuss why you guys made your suggestion threads and sites. Can you tell us what these sites are and the thread? I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of suggestion threads, so is there a specifically prevalent one that you want to bring up?
Zaffax, go ahead and start off with that because you did the community. You and Kino did the community thing.
Yeah, you had the community expansion, which probably makes a lot of people roll their eyes, but basically, as I was saying before, it was very apparent that they were going to release a new game. I mean, they had, Sim Kane had gone over to AV headquarters and they had pretty much told them that they're going to wipe the servers, despite people denying it for 2 years straight. But, you know, when we knew that there was going to be a new game, and it was very apparent from the normal game that they really weren't focused. They weren't really adding anything to DF. Like, there really hasn't been anything added to Darkfall 1 since it launched, for the most part. Like, I think it's hard to look at the housing system and think that they really just added all that in since launch. Like, I think a lot of that was already there. It just wasn't ready. But, you know, going on the assumption that they were in fact releasing a new game, we decided to focus a bit of resources on more of a targeted approach of saying, let's not do this stuff of, oh, add regional banking to the game in such a general sense, because then the question is like, well, how do you do that? So we made this list, tried bringing a few people in just for quote-unquote legitimacy purposes, but really all it was, I'll be honest, I mean, it was just us writing a list and selling it off as a community. But
Is that on a separate site?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me, I'll put it in the chat, hold on.
Now, I'm also at your dforacle.blogspot.com site. That is you, right, Zaffax?
Yeah, that was me. That was back in the days of the coalition and Hyperion and stuff like that. I mean, it's back on EU, but when the, the politics completely fell apart. The thing is that propaganda was less of a deal in the NA server than it was in early EU. I mean, the population was significantly less. The metagame was a lot less. You talk about quality of clans. The clans that had played on EU that went to NA were like a mile ahead of the rest of the curve. And, I still think that holds true today. I still think that it's the clans from the beginning. I mean, your big factors like Sinister, or BKS, or Nemesis, and people like that that are still going to, absolutely stomp face as far as Darkfall 2 is concerned. Because I still don't think that a lot of the NA clans were ever really challenged. I just don't think that they understand what the metagame's like on a full populated server.
Okay, I
I
haven't
mean,
seen
the thing is that go ahead.
I haven't seen Sinister, and by the way, let's be realistic. I don't swim in the forums all day long. I mean, some of you guys, not you two particularly, but some of the Darkfall players are on the forums all day long, which is a sweet thing. That's not part of my time allocation, so I might be missing it. But is Sinister playing the metagame right now? Personally, I haven't noticed much from them, and if they're not playing that game, are they really even coming into UW? I haven't checked their site recently for that, but I'm under the impression they're really sticking to these PvE games lately.
Well, Sinister's coming back, and the thing is like Sinister's been really good. Probably the best in this game so far as building a Zerg is concerned. That's can be maintained.
Yeah.
Obviously there was Death Alliance as far as the EU server was concerned, even though Sinister really wasn't in Death from the beginning. But the as far as the NA server was concerned, prior to transfers, I mean, Sinister basically ran the server. Like, they control like 70% of the server population, and they control like all the housing in the game and everything else. Like they control the economy and stuff. I mean, there's a number of reasons why they left, but the expectation that from those that actually had any idea how the game was going to turn out, there was fully the expectation that it was going to be transfers versus Sinister. That Sinister was going to be fighting pretty much the transfer population, and that's going to be how the game rolled. And that when Sinister quit the game, it kind of left a hole.
Okay, didn't they just control the Northwest?
Sinister was on. I'm talking about the NA server.
Right. I'm talking about NA also. Okay, or maybe I'm fucking up, but
No, they were on Cairn. They lived in Kalfadar.
okay, I am talking about NA. I'm sorry. Okay, what are you talking about? Which one? I'm actually thinking about the end of days for Sinister when they left. They made a showing on NA. They controlled the Northwest.
On Niflheim, they lived. They lived in Niflheim on EU server, and then they went to Cairn for NA. And then in Cairn, they also controlled the Rubiot Alliance, which is basically a shell alliance for all extensive purposes. That were their bitches.
I thought they had Sunthrone. I could swear Sinister had Sunthrone. Am I just off?
Sunthrone was controlled by Icon.
On NA.
Yeah. They owned Kalfadar.
Wow,
okay. LTD and Dayer.
Dude, I'm not fucking talking any more NA or EU history. I swear. Okay, Xpiher, wait. Am I not... Are you telling me that that Sunstone was never owned by Sinister on either server? Nobody. Dead silence. Okay. Dumbass alert. Let's get off history post haste. Okay, so, anyway, I was just looking over at the Sinister forum, and under their Darkfall UW discussion, it seems very light, so I don't know if they're hitting it up hard in the Darkfall channel, but, I don't know. I'll be kind of surprised if they make a good showing. The way I'm seeing the game shape up so far with UW. Now, I do know Sinister has a lot of solid organization. They've been running a nice organization for a while now. So I suppose if they do bring that into the game, it will definitely bear impact on the flow of UW and, city control and stuff like that. But it also seems like Sinister gets into these games, these conquest games, and they back out sooner than later. Do you refute that?
Sinister was in Darkfall for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know where you're coming from. I mean,
oh my god, we need to fucking get into Crush Dark Gods, like fucking database. They were in a long time. They weren't in... I mean... Okay, let's talk about NA specifically. When they're on NA, they weren't there that long.
Let me give a reference. No, they were there for a while. Because
That's
the thing is
not anybody was there long in NA.
Well, the thing is, like, look at the NA server. You ended up having, Nemesis and BKS left together for a little while, and then, Nemesis took Tallpack and the remaining holdings on Yasam, and looking forward, they knew that the Magic patch was coming. So I decided that we know Sea Towers are coming, we know Magic's not going to be as powerful. They're changing the system and everything else. So let's go and take Fergum because. It was very obvious where the Sea Towers are going to be. That we knew it was going to be on the top and bottom, and that Fergum was going to be right there. because there was no other place you can put them. They're not gonna put them on the east-west. They're gonna put them north-south. So we go and siege Fergum, and that was back in the siege the shard holder system. So you only had 2 hours notice before your stuff went live. In 2 hours, with zero notice, Sinister pulled in like 250 guys on that small little island. 250, 300 guys on Fergum.
Yeah, I
So
remember that siege.
they were in the pockets of everybody, and that was 2 hour notice. So you got to figure, what if they had 24? Like, I think the time we sieged them was like 11 a.m. So it went live around 1 a.m. or yeah, 1 p.m. So I mean, it wasn't even prime time, and they were just able to pull in a ridiculous number of people. So yeah, I don't know what you're talking about as far as Sinister, not playing the game.
The best way to go at politics is to make it so no one knows what's going on. Keep it
Yeah, the
all
thing about
internal.
Sinisters, they're again like I don't, you're never 100% sure what people have, but Sinister is just very good at building a Zerg, and very good at building connections with other clans and stuff like that. So, let's say they have like dirt nothing right now, it wouldn't fucking matter. I mean, they'd still be able to come strong, and I think that it'd be very foolish going into the game to think that Sinister won't play a pretty big hand.
Okay, so clearly I made a fool of myself, and my Darkfall history was a little lacking. Thank you for filling that in. I think that once UW releases, I'm going to have to try to hit it up with one of you guys, like for 15 minutes a month or something, and just get a fucking recap of what's going on. Just keep me straight, and we'll then also have a recorded history of what's happening moving forward. You know what I mean? I take that as a yes. So,
Or you can read the forums, whatever.
oh, dude, there's so much parsing that has to be done when you're on the forums. That's the problem. And so much spin. You know what I mean? I feel like when you talk to somebody, you actually get more truth. You can get down to the nuts and bolts of what's really happening. But with the forums, there's so much back and forth, and people misreading each other's text, and like they'll read the first part of somebody's just a reply, and then they'll ignore the rest of it. But the rest of it sort of gives meaning to the first part, and actually alters the meaning. You know what I mean?
No, I completely understand what you're saying. But when I said you could read the forums, I mean I'm gonna do that anyway.
Oh,
Actually,
absolutely. So let's move on to the next question here, and escape my embarrassment here. So what were there's a point you brought up, Xpiher, which are what were our primary differences in opinion on the direction DFO should go? So why don't you explain that? And some people that say, somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, why are we talking about DFO, not UW? Well, we did talk about UW at the outset, and we kind of conclude that a lot of the information that there's a bunch of information that's missing, and we can only go over it so much. I'm sure if we have time, we might rehash a few points at the end of this cast. But with the guys we have here with us tonight, as you've heard, they know the ins and outs of the entire political and historical events that transpired in Aegon. Whereas if you just got that from me, like I said, Sinister wasn't much of a factor. I mean,
Well,
when I say that, they were a factor, but they seem to have a short-lived existence on the server from my recollection. Yet we get these guys on here, and they keep it straight. So that's kind of why we're hitting all these DFO points, and to explain, what they're all about. What were you going to say, Zaffax?
I'm gonna go ahead and cut you off, Ryan. Yeah, I think we are gonna go back into the Unholy Wars, but I think we're just hitting up some of the preliminary stuff from DF1 because the thing is, it's hard to especially the metagame. Like, it's hard to understand what the way the metagame's gonna go unless you at least get some foundational knowledge from the first. But I know myself. I'm looking forward to talking about Unholy Wars a tad more later on in this podcast.
Yeah, I can speculate all day long. And so, by the way, as we go through these points, if either one of you are looking at these points like, fucking don't do that one, don't read that, let's just skip them, then we can get right into further speculation because there's a lot. I mean, we just saw recently released video footage of the Air Elementalists. I'll be honest, I'm kind of excited about that. First we saw the Battle Brand. I was excited by that when everybody was screaming OP. Now we've got the Air Elementalists, and there's some excitement to the speculation surrounding that character's gameplay. So there's a lot, I guess, we can talk about. So let's just continue to cover these points. Tell me which ones you want to skip if you see any. But otherwise, this is all good material for those that are interested in Darkfall Arcana, and these are, and it's a game that we'll never experience again. They completely took it offline. The only way you can experience it possibly is if they keep true to the original Darkfall vision in China, should they launch it over there. So going on to Xpire's point here. So what were the differences, Xpire? Why don't you kick this one off, especially since it's your set of questions here. So what are the differences that separate you from Zaffa in terms of how Darkfall should go, and are you finding those similar differences with UW?
The main point that it didn't seem very many people agreed with was the fact that I wanted the race wars to not be forced, but to matter. If you read the lore to the game, it didn't have a lot of depth to it, but there was a lot to go with. There was a lot of history. There was a lot you could tell why the races hated each other, etc., etc. And every single good sandbox game that's ever been released and pretty much ever will get released had some sort of built-in factional warfare system. The race wars in Darkfall could have been that built-in factional warfare system that could have been ignored and would have added depth to the game. So I came up with a system that I felt appeased our peers and the people that wanted to make their own political metagame while also adding in a kind of cool Dark Age of Camelot sort of system.
But that really fell flat on its face, especially for people that only bought one account, in terms of when you go red. What do you think, Zaffa? What's your take on that?
Cypher and I have differed very heavily on this. I thought that the racial alignment system was just a waste. I think it just hindered the game. Thing is, I never really liked the inherent faction stuff. The reason you have faction wars is for people that just can't play the normal metagame. They're not good enough, or they don't have the time or stuff like that. The thing is, the problem with factions is like they're so unnatural. The thing is if you go look at a lot of these bigger alliances that happen in the game, like people build their alliance, they fight the war, and then you have something happen, like so say there'll be an internal coup, or infighting, or someone will get a better deal elsewhere. There's spies and stuff like that. But as far as trying to, like use clan espionage or something like that to blow up a clan, like you can't do that with like a faction system because the factions are preset. There's no changing. It just seems so stale. And one of the problems with the alignment system was it was more of a hindrance. It just made things a pain in the ass than anything. Like it just didn't add to the game. I think that if the metagame is healthy enough, if the banking's right or the transportation's right or ships or whatever it is. I mean, there's a million factors you go down, but if the overall game is correct and the political game is healthy and has a population, then I don't think you need to worry about some artificial, hard-coded alliance system. I mean, it's almost like the half-assed, approach, in my opinion.
But there are people that won't get into the political aspect. Like you were saying, they can't do it. They either don't have time commitments, it's too complicated for them, or whatever. And I mean, look at Eve and UO. All right, they both had a built-in factional warfare system of some sort. Eve's usually with these systems, it's red versus blue essentially, but it was still there. And even in that, there is political depth. There are people that make alternate accounts to spy to find out what's going on. You have, I don't know, it just seems like it adds more to the game and it doesn't take anything away if it's done well.
All right, if you're going to have a faction system, if you're going to have a race-based conflict system in a game, the world cannot be designed like it was in Darkfall. The world in Darkfall did not allow for race system. It wasn't designed properly for it. And the other thing is that the amount of resources you will have to put into that game, development-wise, and the amount of size of the world and the population in the game and stuff like that would all have to be significantly, and I mean like a million times more than what Darkfall had. That for the type of company that AV is, for the type of niche that the game was filling, for the type of community that was going to be playing it, having a hybrid system of faction and metagame wasn't going to work. They didn't have the resources for it. I mean, you'd have to have I think even very few AAA companies could do that.
Xpire.
I mean, it's
After the fact, do you feel that they should? Do you believe that they designed the original faction system poorly, or do you think that that was fine and you would have liked to see the exact same system in UW? Or are you basically saying you want to see factions but better designed?
It was there was a lot of contention early game launch where there was a bunch of people that joined the game with specifically the mentality that there's going to be an alignment system. It's going to be race based, and we want to see that grow. Hyperion, like the largest freaking Zerg in the server, essentially, when it first launched, all were planning on being humans and only doing things for humans. We had Savage, they were all going to be wolves. The Dusk Alliance, or whatever the hell they were called, were all alpha. I mean, it was people who went into the game with this mentality, and it added to it. But AV just completely dropped the ball on it, and they didn't design it well enough. I'm going to disagree with the way the world's set up, but yeah, they just didn't do it well enough.
Okay,
The
so
thing that you have to remember is that early on you had no clan colors in the game, so there was a
That
little
too.
bit of advantage to the non-ARAC guilds, and ARAC stands for all race, one clan. But the early on in the game, when you had a clanmate, there was no green under their name. There was only red and blue. So whether someone was allied, an enemy, whatever, there was nothing there. There was no identifier. It said their name, it said their clan, and that was it. And it made it very difficult for organizing these massive Zergs. Uh, so one of the things that you could do to help organize is, join the same, be the same race. It'd be like all humans or all orc or whatever. So what it would do is that anyone outside of your race, well, they're clearly a target because you don't have anyone of that race in your clan. While the people that were Zerging had people of all races. Well, when you go get, like sieges in Takia where they have 1,000 people at it, or a 500-man siege force or something like that, you know, uh, it's very chaotic, and that there was actually to that element, the race stuff, was interesting. But as soon as they added colors in the game, so like they color coded everything, and there was really no way in hell you could not realize someone was an ally. Any reason to be to follow any type of racial politics went out the window. That it really just became a hindrance.
Yes. Well, at that point, it did become a hindrance, and it wasn't designed. Like I said, it wasn't designed properly in the first place. And I just try to build on that.
yeah, I agree. Okay, Xpiher, I agree that there were some shortcomings in the design. In fact, not just in the design, but in the actual implementation. If you recall, in development, they were talking about there would be a penalty, and I can't remember if they actually defined it very well or not, but they did say there'd be a
They
penalty
never said it.
For Eric clans. But they did say Erics would have penalties, right? And I thought they gave an example,
Yes.
like
So that
if you ran an Eric clan, the thing is, if once you took over a city, you'd have to either declare it being. I'm just gonna give an example here. You'd have to declare it as a Maharim-based city, or the nature that just the city and whatever land it's in would be, belong to that race. And as a result, the guards, because remember originally there were going to be guards, the guards would attack players that were actually evil to that race alliance. And so I thought that would be an interesting
Yep.
concept, and they never implemented it, which I don't know. It surprised me, but once again, maybe they ran up against development coding issues just prior to launching. As it been in development for what was it, 7 years, 5 years?
A ridiculous amount of time. The systems changed so much that it was pathetic, honestly.
Yeah, I mean overall, so now that hindsight's 2020, and we see what they had intended, but what they actually implemented, and we also can note how the system evolved from the beginning until the closing of Darkfall. When they said with UW, you would be red, but there'd be no penalty, I was actually satisfied with this. Also, I spoke with, APOC was on one of my casts, and he was the one that first got me thinking that they shouldn't have any sort of alignment penalty system in place at all. And we sort of argued it lightly back and forth. And at the end of the day, I agree because it does make things simpler and it allows you to immerse yourself deeper into the game. However, on the flip side, there's a part of me that wants to have this sort of racial restriction and penalty just to make the game, I don't know, potentially richer. But once again, as you said, Xpiher, it have to be developed and implemented very precisely and not half-assed done. And by the way, I'm not accusing any of you of half-assedness here. Just there are some evident shortcomings in the way the system sort of played out. Let's move on to the next question here, or point. And Xpire suggests that I probe you guys for anything secret that you folks are willing to reveal about your DFO politics. So let's start off with you on that one, Xpire. Do you have what's going on with Darkfall politics as you feed into UW? Do you have any? Are you playing a certain role, or are you more or less just sort of like a mental scribe of Aegon, noting what's going on and trying to play a spin-free formfall?
I have somewhat of an issue being the fact that I live in Korea. It really limits my options a lot with the type of clans that I can join. I've been probing, prodding, but not anything I can really share.
This is your question point. So there's nothing at all you can share. No hints on what you're planning for UW. And Zaffa, you're next.
What my plans? Well, I mean, I plan to do the same thing I did essentially in the first Darkfall. I'm having a hard time finding a clan because of time zone issues. But no, I'm gonna play the political metagame and maybe do some work on the side.
What kind of work on the side? What do you mean by that?
Uh,
He'll go become the next Vestige Enterprise.
yes, that's what I'll do. No, I plan on chronicling the history, trying to do the whole interview thing again.
Oh, excellent, dude. If you chronicle the history, something that I always wanted to do, and I thought about this early in Darkfall, but I failed on 20 different levels, and I know that I'll fail again moving forward, so I'm not even going to attempt it, was to more or less take screenshots every week of the Aegonian landscape as it stood on the Darkfall political map. So, by the way, if I might suggest, if you are going to chronicle things, I sure as hell would like to see a picture archive at least broken down week by week if possible, or even month by month, just showing various holdings that clans have taken over. What do you think about that?
That's something that I can do. Sure.
One thing I advise you on that is that don't trust the maps too much. That a lot of times there's a story much
No,
bigger than what's on those maps. That a lot of times a clan will hold the holding, but it's pretty much just holding it. In name alone that there's another guild actually running everything. That
yes,
the thing is that the way the game works is again you can only be in so many places at a time. So you'll have a lot of puppet alliances or puppet agreements in the game. So you'll say like a
non-aggression
clan like say
pact.
Sinister, who we talked about earlier, that'll be running this massive network, but they'll
Okay.
only actually hold a few holdings themselves.
See, I gotta say, for anybody that has not played Darkfall that is actively listening right now or picks up the MP3 later, it's actually kind of fucking hilarious in a non laugh out loud manner listening to these guys talk because they are, and it sounds like Zaffax, you're deeply entrenched in this Game of fucking Thrones in Darkfall. And for the casual player or the guy, like I get on and I just want to go kill some mobs, hope to engage in some PvP, develop my character, go out into the world, explore it, and just see what's going on. You guys are on an entirely different level. You're in the dark back alleys making agreements and arrangements and just shaping the gamescape, and that's very fucking interesting. And it's weird to talk to you guys because I've never spoken with people in such a depth and realized how deep that pool goes. So it's almost like you're lifting the veil of the matrix and I'm seeing what's really behind the scenes. Now I know that all these back alley deals are made, but on a very surface level, and so it's kind of interesting for you to part the curtains just a little bit and show us what's going on. So with that, I want to ask you, because I'm not aware of this, what is Vestige Enterprise, and what are your political plans upcoming with the Darkfall UW? Any secrets that or you might be willing to allude to?
Vestige was, I guess you could call it more of a laughing stock than anything. back in the days of the Coalition, you had this guy by the name of Zarathus, who was about a 16-year-old kid that, he thought himself pretty highly, but for all intents and purposes, he was the secretary of Gluttony. And at the, when things started going bad for the Coalition, he made some silly posts saying that how he was leaving the Coalition, how he was now a spy for Mercs, and kind of became a laughingstock over there. But in any case, when he went to the NA server, he's like, I'm gonna make Vestige, which was very publicly supposed to be like basically a spy clan. Like that was its whole purpose, and it was going to, you know, uh, disseminate information and sell it and everything else. But the thing was, is, you know, whatever he was going for, just completely bombed. I mean, I think he showed he was very politically connected to BKS and kind of showed his hand, within the first month of the clan existing. I mean, the whole thing was an absolute joke, and it was only kind of brought up as a swipe of how not to do things.
Yeah, and then it became a running joke that, oh, it's gonna be the next massive Zerg, and they're gonna pull in like 500 people. They made whoever was doing it
Well,
made
Vestige
a
Gaming
bunch
was
of all.
completely different than Vestige Enterprises. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I thought that's what you were talking.
Yeah, don't fuck with Zaffa and his knowledge. Don't fuck with it one bit. He'll work you over. I got worked over earlier on that sin thing, man. Tell you. So moving into UW, what's going on with you for politics? Give us a secret. Just give us something. Give us a little meat to fucking stare at and drool over in terms of what you slash Vampisis or Nemavamp or whatever, what you guys are going to do. Just give us a little morsel, man.
I don't think I've ever heard the term Nemavamp before,
I
but
just made it
I'll
up
have
on
to
the
look
fly.
into that. I was kind of laughing at the some of the chat commentary, but the no, I think we're looking pretty good. Um, as far as the spy stuff, it's amazing how quickly some of those networks come back up. Uh, so I definitely think, I think it's kind of disappointing because, when you make your own plans, you look at the plans of other people and everything else and find out what they're doing. And I kind of feel like there's a lot of clans that just aren't taking the effort that needs to be done for these launches. Like, as I said before, there's a lot of clans that just don't fucking get it. Like, they just don't understand, like, what goes on. Like, they think of things so, like, one or two dimensionally. And, I think that, as far as the server is concerned, we're much, 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 much better off than, most of those clans out there. I mean, again, you know, the politics that some of these clans do is just so basic that they just do such basic analysis, or they do stuff based on grudges and stuff like that, or they just don't understand the value of spies, or the thing is, there was a funny post where talking about spy clans. He had someone on the forums, I think of 3-4 weeks ago, make a post saying, thinking of making a spy clan. What do you think of the idea and everything else? And a lot of people that I guess you could call in the know kind of laughed at the guy. It's like, bro, like if you're having spies, they should have been in clans like weeks or potentially months ago.
Yeah.
Like that, all that stuff needs to be done well in advance. Because the thing is like to give an example, with TRA when Nemesis went and destroyed the Alliance. At the time, you had a guy by the name of Fox Die, who was pretty much, for all intents and purposes, the main general of the Alliance. He's the one who led all the siege stuff. The guy was a spy, and was working for Nemesis and arguably for BKS as well. And the thing is, like when people think of spies, they think like, oh, like low-end members who just don't talk much. Like it's so obvious who the spy is, and it's like no. The thing is, like the people that are really successful, they put in people long time before, or potentially have someone play like years with the clan, but their real loyalties are with somebody else. And so people in officer positions will be the spies. And in that regard, I think we're pretty well off. Of it's not just the entry level stuff; it's the officer level stuff, and that's why I say that a lot of clans just don't get it because they just don't involve themselves in that type of long-term planning and stuff.
Okay, talking about this deep game of clans, do you have any spies inserted in certain guilds that you can name? For example, I was talking to Dreadlord Cripey, who I will be casting with this
Wait, wait,
upcoming.
wait! I got to cut you off, right?
What? You can't
Do you
ask the
have?
question
Let
like
me
that.
let me hear that correct. Do you have any spies and clans that you will name? Yeah, well, fucking Zypher's a spy for me. Like, what do you want? What do you want people to say? Like,
I want you to say, yeah, here's one, but we won't tell you his name. Of course, dude. That's what this is all about. Trying to gain some insight and the knowledge. Absolutely, no
but the thing
question.
is, like, spies. The spy stuff isn't just. It's not like you just have. You almost. I feel like you're under the misconception that like to get spies, you just have like a person join a clan, and then it's like cool. Like we have access to their vent and their clan stuff. Like no, like you want to get people in those officer positions. Like it's a lot more in depth than that. And so, you know,
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I'm going to tell you
no.
that's obvious, especially from everything you just said. That's obvious. But does that mean I don't ask the question
So
because
what do you
you?
want me to? So when you say like,
Yeah. So, for example, let me give you an example of
oh,
what I'm looking for. So, as I was starting off, I'm going to have a cast with Dreadlord Cripey coming up this Wednesday. So, if you said, "Yeah, we have a spy high up in Gentleman," that's fucking intriguing. That's it. Didn't ask you to name names, and you're just confirming that they have a burr in their boot right from the get, and that's just fucking comical. So if you're willing to share anything like that, cool. But if you want to play it closer to the chest
all
or
right.
under to the vest, I totally understand that.
I'll say you this. We got spies in a lot of clans right now, but I'm not going to go into specifics for very obvious reasons.
Now, what? Okay, what is the life of the spy like? Do they, at least under your construct, do they ever return to the mother clan, or do they stay with the clan they've infiltrated until it's fallen apart? What's your goal there?
Well, a lot of a lot of times it depends. Like sometimes you never even make public that they were spy to begin with. Sometimes they just go on so you can use them later, or sometimes they'll be quick. Sometimes they'll be long term. The thing is like I remember like the first time I was kind of surprised by the spy stuff. I played a game called Age of Conan, which is really a disappointment. I
Yes.
mean, the game, as advertised, is basically Darkfall. Like Darkfall is basically what Conan was advertised to be. But in the clan, or in the game, for VJ, he had this guy by the name of the Jester, and he had been in the clan for the better part of a year and a half to 2 years. And he wasn't an officer or anything like that, but he was just a standard member. And then the game launches, and you have the goons in the game and everything else. And there was really no reason for spies because of the way the game worked out. And so he left, and it's like, GG, fuck you guys, I've been a spy the whole time. Now, was that true or not? Who knows? But, on the presumption that it was, it at least gave the indication of just how committed some people were to the spy stuff. It's like, you were in the clan for a year and a half? Because remember, the game was delayed like 3 times. So you were in the clan for a year and a half spying? It's like, it takes a special type of person for that, I guess.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
But
How do you do that? I mean, so you say, if you told me, and this is just my character, so like you said, a special type of a person. If you said, okay, Ryan, it's time for you to be a spy. You're going to be that spy and gentleman. So you make the connects, get up to officer level, and just feed us tidbits of information that could give us leverage on the battlefield or, in the trading scene behind the
it's not always
systems.
just
What?
information, though. Sometimes it's also about causing like internal strife. So like if you have a couple members in the clan, and there's already some bit of internal turmoil, you can just use them to like be more vocal in the conversations and to start screwing things up. You know, trying to it's more about just tearing apart clans from the outside. It's also about tearing apart from the inside. And so there have been a number of conflicts on the server, even in Darkfall 1 that we won't talk about, that were heavily influenced.
That we won't talk about? Why not? Darkfall 1 is dead. I mean, you don't have to name names. You can say Spy X in Big Clan Y did this and that, and here's the outcome. I mean, that'd be interesting. You can't share that sort of information?
No, because the thing is like, as I said before, not all spies are. It's not like you said. It's not like when the game finishes, like a laundry list comes out of everyone that ever spied for you, and so sometimes there'll be like close friends or other people, which that they'll screw over. I guess I said take a special type of person, and then some of these people will willingly screw over like real life friends, or people they've known for years, uh, for just like a little bit of gold in game, and so out of respect for them, you you, you, you there's a lot of silent victories, a lot of stuff that you do that never hits the forums. It'll look like clan so and so blew up or a certain alliance blew up for internal reasons that really weren't truly internal. I mean, they were caused by you, but you you just take the silent victories and just go on. You don't need to be a glory hog and take credit for everything.
Most most of the major alliances early game uh, had were caught. The internal strife was caused by spies. Uh, a lot a lot of the we demand our own holding stuff that caused some of the breakups. Spies.
Wow. That's interesting to hear because you don't hear about it often. I mean, like I said earlier, maybe that's something you'd see on the forums a lot. But for those of us that aren't living on the forums 24/7, it's definitely interesting. I did a cast with a guy from the Goblin Preservation Society. He was standing in for Shaman. He wanted to talk about what they did, or Goblin Shaman, and just listening to the guy, even that being a trade ganker full time takes a special personality. He mentioned that he would make friends with people in Vent, hear their voice, talk about their children's soccer practice, and then steal all their pixels, which obviously is stealing that person's time. It's not as simple as, oh yeah, they got my fucking raft, that's it. No, all the pixels in your bank, that took time, sweat, and game investment to get. So yeah, it's totally interesting. You've got these trade gankers, these spies, then you have simpletons like me, you've got guild leaders. That's a whole different thing. I was talking to King Manus, and I'm sure this is the way it is with everybody. I experienced this a little bit in Shadowbane when we ran a 300-man guild, is that just being a guild leader, he said he couldn't play, and that's been my experience. If you're a serious guild leader and you have a large following, it is almost fucking impossible to play the game without getting chat spammed. So, guys, keep that in mind next time you're hitting up your guild leader nonstop. You're making it so they can't play. But that takes a special kind of character also, just to engage the game at that level. And with Manus specifically, just the metagame that he played in Forum Fall. When we ran our shit in Shadowbane, there was no metagame for us. It's all in-game. It's probably why we fell apart. So those were. So I guess we didn't get any real secrets, but we did we did gain some insight into the life of a spy in Darkfall, and that. I guess we all have to be on the lookout for that. If at any chance, though, Zaffa, you do want to drop names, go ahead later in this cast. Okay, so moving on, though, let's go on to Xpihre's next point. Covering what clans you're involved in, and that's kind of a. I guess we can just gloss that one real quick. But Zaffa, you were involved.
We kind of already did that.
Yeah. Well, you were, but like you're kind
No,
of a freelancer. But
no
Zaffa,
secret.
he was. You were mostly Nemesis. Is that kind of the way to break that down?
Yeah, I've been playing with the same people since Darkfall launched on EU.
Hey, is
And
Talon
played
X
with
coming
VP.
back?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that guy seemed to put a lot of work into it from the vamp end. Okay, what kind of PvP players were we? So real quick, I think I saw this mentioned in the chat earlier. Some people were saying, "Who are you? Who are this and that in the game?" Were any of you notorious PvPers, or are you primarily metagamers? What's your story, starting with Xpihre?
I was primarily a metagamer, but I did do a lot of siege stuff, helping with the planning and that sort of thing.
How about you, Zaffa? Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
No, it's fine. The thing is, I did the metagame a lot, but I did more PvP than I think a lot of people realize. The thing is when the North American server opened up, and I re-rolled. Uh, at the time, Magic was, people were getting to see how powerful Magic was in the game, and at the time, you still had the old grind system, so it was still absolutely ridiculous. It was like 200k to get one Magic school to 100 and stuff like that. Well, I was fortunate enough that on day one of the server, I had like the very first house deed in the game, and so I sold it for about 300k day two of the game, and so I had about 300k gold, second day of Darkfall, and you know, I used a lot of it I used some of it to make sure that Kato would be the number one crafter as far as our region was concerned. But I also leveled the fire magic, and so I got 100 fire magic within the first month of the game with all fire spells to 75. And I also had another house. Like I was really lucky with the deeds, and I had the house on a Araniat down on a Rubiat, and so I would go solo PvP on Rubiat all the time. Uh, it was really funny because at the time you had a few other members. You had Jedi Mine, you had Count Dooku, you had Iron Chef, who was with Sick Bastards now. Um, but it really ended up in a situation where you had about 5 or 6 players completely lock down the continent. Um, as far as the mines went, it got so bad that people literally were blowing up their own mines so that we couldn't hit them. They just used repair shards to do it. But we lived in, one of the holdings we had was Sunstone, so we had access to like unlimited Sparkstone. So we would just literally make the repair shards and just repair the mines when we would go into the different holdings. Unfortunately, AV eventually did do the magic patch, and I wasn't around that day, so I went from having one of the highest level characters on the server to one of the lowest characters on the server within 24 hours. And considering the ridiculous grind it had taken to get the 100 fire magic, my idea was I was gonna get to PvP level and just PvP and just never worry about grinding again. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and I got burned out and quit for a little while. But I came back around transfers time and participated with that stuff. Uh,
Were you
but
macro grinding in the beginning,
no,
or was that all real?
no, it was all real grinding.
So you were out there shooting your
I
fireballs at people and mobs.
Yeah.
I mean, not that. I mean, I don't look down on macroing. It's just, obviously there's a lot of it. So I think people like to know. At least I do.
No, I macroed later on. So like after transfers, there was a notorious group sex macro. It's like a pixel detection macro that BKS, Nemesis, DHW, and a number of other clans use to get their characters ridiculously higher level than the rest of the server. But
Yeah.
you know, and that was funny because it would be to that macro was so powerful that we would myself, Kino, and a few others would go out on a raft of outside Tallpeck, go northwest towards about the Kraken spawn, right on the line before the Kraken spawned, and would go out there with uh, I don't know, 20k regs, you know, 30 different sets of gear and weapons and stuff like that, and just a ridiculous amount of equipment. I mean, it would, any character would have loved to kill us and get our stuff, and we would just go macro with that stuff. I mean, the macros got absolutely ridiculous at a certain point, but at that point, I wasn't doing any type of macroing. But the thing is, after transfers, I got much more into the metagame and stuff like that, and I really didn't go back to the a lot of the normal freelance PvP because my character was too underleveled, so I was kind of forced to this macro. But when I finally leveled my character up, I did transfer to the EU server. I played under an alias, so no one knew who I was, but I played under that and show up to sieges and full drag and stuff like that and go PvP a lot. So I did PvP just you know sometimes in a very non-visible fashion.
All right
Not
then.
everyone needs to make a forum post saying how they own the group.
Yeah. And 1v1 duels aren't the entire game. So.
All right, let's move on then to basically the last question for reminiscing on Darkfall, minus a little bit of drama that one of you guys have to introduce here. But Darkfall's gone now. It's dead. It's in the earth. Maybe it'll be in China. But what did you hope Darkfall would be? Did it actually fulfill any of those or the majority of those hopes? And what were your greatest disappointments with Darkfall Xpiher?
Probably the fact that there wasn't some sort of cap was probably one of the biggest issues with the game.
Cap?
Skill cap, sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, in what way do you
And
mean?
the fact that you can level endlessly is what he's talking about.
Okay. And then outside of that,
So,
outside of that, were you pretty much satisfied and you love Darkfall, so you just hoping UW pretty much copies that template?
I mean, Darkfall is like a special thing, it's like the first massive scale game like this that uses first person shooting mechanics and active combat, all this stuff. which is really the main driving reason that I played because I don't like queuing skills and all that sort of thing. It's just a completely different game. So to say that I absolutely loved every aspect of it, of course not. I mean, I have a suggestion thread that's probably 5 pages long or something. I don't know. But I don't know. I just hope that it takes all the great stuff that Darkfall 1 did and just improves on it. And it looks like that's what's happening.
How about you, Zaffa? Biggest letdowns and what you're looking forward to? Darkfall, excellent game for you. What's the deal?
Well, I think the grind was huge, but the other thing is, for someone who focuses a lot on the metagame, I think one of the biggest disappointments was that there really was no purpose to having cities in the game for Darkfall 1. I mean, if you look at a lot of these clans, I mean, a lot of them had every expectation prior to saying that Chaos Cities were removed to just live out of Chaos Cities because, there really wasn't much. I think Hyperion was probably the first to realize this because of all the holdings they had, but there was no reason to siege people in the first game. The clans, the cities just didn't matter at all. I mean, it got to the point where really the only thing they were used for was bind spots and for the instant travel. But, that was a huge letdown. I thought the siege system got absolutely ridiculous. To the point where, you know, uh, having to destroy half the walls of the city with a 22-hour timer. Like, how did AV think that was even possibly a good idea? I mean, it just made it to where
Band-aid fix on top of band-aid fix.
it got so expensive to siege and got to the point where, when you have instant travel in the game and global banking and a 22-hour system, so people are going to know well in advance. Uh, you get to the point where everyone's showing up to sieges. So not only is there no reason to siege in the first place, but even if you do siege, like it was almost impossible to take a holding when the server was even remotely populated. I like the 6-hour shard carrier system a lot better. Obviously, there were problems with server player crashes, but I think there were a million suggestions on the boards of how that could have been fixed. I mean, whether it be just an item they hold or something else. Because you can say that, well, that's not really good because then what if you end up getting sieged and no one knows about it? What if you're just not there that day? Well, the thing is like, as I said before, the conquest isn't something that's done overnight. It's not like the leader's just like, oh, wouldn't it be like really cool if we just went and like sieged, sick bastards tonight? Hell yeah, let's go for it. Like, no, there's weeks or
It
months of
got to
planning
that
because
point.
it did get to that point. But the thing was, as it used to be, there was a lot of planning involved, and so you had plenty of time. If you had spies, you would have found out about it. So like I know when Takia was getting sieged by Hyperion, the goons informed us like, hey guys, be aware, like they're gonna siege you. So we had people on that night. There was a much deeper metagame because if you didn't, you'd get wiped out. But I think that they completely end up screwing up metagame, the metagame, the sieging, and just a lot of aspects of the game. And obviously the endless grind was absolutely ridiculous. I just hope that with a new game, and this is one of the questions that I asked Tasos in the stream or the podcast the other day is, you said that you're linking villages to the cities, but at the end of the day, why do we need to take them? Because for the hundreds of thousands of gold it cost in the first game to siege, there is no way you're going to make that cost up in villages. Because remember, not only do you got to pay for the city cost to siege, but you got to pay for the siege equipment, you got to pay off mercs, you gotta, a lot of times there's retainer agreements. I mean, there's a lot of money that needs to go there, a lot of political capital, and a lot of risk involved. And why take that risk when there's really nothing to gain? And he said that, oh, you trust me, like it's going to be worth taking, like they're linked to villages. But it's like again, you didn't answer the question. Even Tasis himself said, I'm sorry, I didn't answer his question. So hopefully there's something they're not telling us that cities are going to be worth a lot more than they were in the first game. And I think removing chaos cities helps, but I think this going to have to be even more than that as far as making the cities worth a thing.
Yeah, I've definitely been thinking a bit on that and curious how they're going to make it worthwhile. That's something I often hear people bring up is just what's the true value of holding some land. I think was it maybe it's Manus or Brando. I can't recall who it was exactly, but or maybe it was neither. One of them, somebody had said that it seems. What's the deal? It's not worth taking land in the beginning because it's just going to be taken from you, and so it's better. It seems to be better just to wait.
It one
That
of the
used to be
easiest things
true.
that Yeah.
Before Chaos Cities were removed, that was what most clans were playing, was live out of Chaos Cities. But when they said there's no Chaos Cities in the game, uh, you've almost required that if you're going to live on a subcontinent or the center of the map or really any place outside of the starter zones, which let's be honest, you're not going to go become a factor out of Heart of Vienna or Sanguine. You have to take a
Yeah, you're
holding.
not even gonna start.
Okay, so this sounds
Like
like a
you
good
can't live.
idea. The removal of chaos cities. This sounds like a good idea then.
I think it was necessary because AV wouldn't fix other problems. I think there were other
Yeah.
ways of going about it. I think there's going to be other repercussions though from removing the Chaos Cities.
It's gonna be harder to rebuild, perhaps.
Well, you're fucking over a lot of these small clans. I mean, and also
That
the
too.
rebuilding thing. I mean, you're basically telling everyone that you either join an alliance or you can't play the game.
All right, then let's move solidly into UW now, and this sort of touches on it. Definitely, we've been kind of crossing the line here, but and this next question, this is a topic that you brought up, Zaffax, just before we began this, and it definitely relates to this. So you can continue on with the sieging and village discussion, but something you pointed out is that you question. The various clans' mentalities. A lot of people who are building their guilds and coming into Darkfall that are their mentality of Darkfall versus the reality of how the game will actually unfold for them. What are you thinking along these lines specifically? How are they unprepared?
I mean, the thing is, I think that very few of the clans. eh, Hold on. All right. So, you know, I think that as I was saying before, I mean, I think there's a lot of clans that were never around at the beginning. They don't understand how high pop works. I mean, obviously there's, plenty of preparations people could be making that they can't. The one thing I'm curious of is the different mentalities that people are going to take, and the different type of clans you'll see. So, like, back on the EU server, you had a clan by the name of Freemasons, and this was a trading clan, and that's all they did. They would trade weapons to one side and then trade the repair shards to the other one. And they made a lot of money off of basically war profiteering. And so I'd be curious to see what type, if you see a reemergence of those type of clans. But I think that, a lot of the clans on the NA server and even the EU server to some extent, they played during a time of like relative peace when there weren't very many people on the server, where people were afraid to wipe people out. And, I think that's the metagame they're used to. I remember back when Nemesis wiped out TRA. We let them keep a lot of holdings. Uh, we let DHOV keep Apitan. We let Sick Bastards keep Kivitstein. We let whoever was in charge of Takia keep that holding. And, in later wars, say when Newbie Down got wiped out, people were allowed to keep holdings that, Vamp sold holdings back to different clans. There's a lot of sparing in the game. But if you look back at early EU, like there was no sparing. Like when you wiped someone out, you wiped them out. Like you took all their holdings and you camped their members and you blacklisted them and you made them all quit the game. And I think that a lot of clans don't realize. I don't think a lot of clans realize just how lucky they were and how much sparing there was in the game. And I think that with the population going up, and I think with some of these, more experienced clans coming back, I think you're gonna have a lot of clans end up getting, caught with their pants down and completely wiped out of the game with
How,
no idea of what hit them.
how do you effectively blacklist somebody? Are you talking about blacklisting a clan or the individuals within that clan? And either way, how do you do
Well,
that?
look what happened to Well, look at what happened to Hyperion, right? When they got blown up. I mean, it was pretty much anyone that was even remotely associated with the Alliance became the target. So Bloodfest. Bloodfest joined the Alliance at what, like the last 2 weeks? Zephyr, maybe you can tell me that. But didn't like Bloodfest only officially ally Hyperion like in the last 2 weeks?
He stepped away from the mic, and I can't answer
Oh, I
that.
gotcha. But in any case, like when Hyperion fell, it didn't fucking matter that the war was over. Like the coalition was still like, no, fuck it, we're taking all your holdings, and Bloodfest was like completely destroyed, and the clan was blown up and everything else. But the thing is like, especially with the more instant travel in the game now than there used to be. The thing is like, if you, it's not the players you target, it's the leadership. So if you blow up a clan and take all their holdings, The clan leader can try moving somewhere else, but you can basically say, if you take this clan, we're going to attack you, and you can pressure people to essentially, as I said before, blacklist these people, so then they can't get their clan started, and they really have no choice but to just quit the game.
Well,
And
how about
so
not quit? How
there,
about just play a different way? I don't know. Like you could blacklist me, I'm
I
still
think
going to play the game.
you have a lot of people that have egos. You can blacklist them to the point where they will never again ever become a factor. Like, look, Sick Bastards, I really think is the best example because they were spared so many times in the game. So many times they could have been completely wiped out, but people let them live for the population. I mean, it was to the point where not so much Sick Bastards, but I remember there was a point where I came back to the game, and this was when Seth Drone started buying a ton of gold and was going after people. Uh, but I wanted to go after Cairn to say that, look, Cairn's been on here too long. We're gonna wipe him out. So, first I contacted a bunch of people saying, who's in this? It won't be run by Nemesis. We'll get Calfadar. Turtles can have this holding. Sick Bastards can have this holding, and so on. A lot of people wouldn't do it because they were too afraid of wiping people out. But I think that a lot of the older clans are going to be much more willing to wipe people out again. And at least with the people I've spoken to, people are going to be a whole lot more aggressive this time and not as caring about the server population.
Okay, I think there's one thing I'm missing, so I want to start a clan. In fact, I'm going in with a clan. It's kind of a loose affiliation of up to 30 different dudes. You get it in your mind to now we actually I don't even think we're going to go for a holding. We actually just plan on I don't know, allying with people and being good allies, just helping them in the fight, maybe providing resources and whatever. So here I am with my clan that is more of a let's say a support clan. How can you wipe me out and make me quit the game?
No one's going to want to wipe you up because you're not a factor clan. The thing is like, each alliance is pretty much run by one or two clans. I mean, you'll have an alliance that'll say, we're a democracy here, and all these people that participate. But at the end of the day, I mean, you have certain people that are basically running the show, and it's those people that are going to be blacklisted. So, if you're some clan that really wasn't part of the alliance to begin with, and you just join in saying like, hey, like we'll live out of your cities, we'll pay whatever, or we'll help show up in your fights, but we're not quote unquote reliable, or we're not like one of the big guys. There's no reason for people to attack you anyways. You're not a threat. It's not like you're gonna come back later and like attack us. You're just, you'll just go and join some. You're just a floater clan. You'll join someone else and couldn't really care less. But those that actually will come back, so like Sick Bastards, like their alliance got blown up like 3 or 4 times, and they just kept making a new alliance after new alliance after new alliance. In a situation like that, you just blacklist the members. You blow their clan up to the point of non-repair, and do whatever you can just so that the players really have no chance of ever, being a factor in the game again. So it's not like you're trying to go after every single member of every single alliance you go after, but you're just the key guys. Because the thing is like you may have a guild of 100 players, but how many of those players really are leading? How many of them really care about the current conflict? I mean, I think a lot of times you can. I know we did this with TRA, where we basically said, look, we're taking these holdings that we're going after, de-ally or you get sieged. And you know what? They did it because most people don't care about the current political mess. Most the political affiliations of an alliance is generally decided by a few people. And if you get rid of those people, then you pretty much resolve the situation.
Okay, this discussion on blacklisting conjures a question to mind. Uh, do you think there, in fact, can you name the people that control Darkfall? Is there such a list? Is there basically a shadow group, in your opinion, of players that, for all intents and purposes, run shit? And if they decided to do this blacklist thing, that it will happen. Your clan will be destroyed and broken up, and you will likely be driven from a video game. Do you believe there's a small group of people, and do you know who they are?
Well, it's not like some like big conspiracy theory thing. I mean, the simple fact is, I mean, there's only so many factor clans in the game, and there's only so many people in a clan that run, actually control stuff. So I mean, to that regard, you say, yeah, I mean, there's a handful of people that if they don't like you, you're fucked. I mean, look at what happened to Harm. Harm,
Harm got
had like
destroyed.
Harm had like three different versions of it, but you had for the NA server, you had a guy by the name of Enigma. Basically take the clan name and run with Harm. And like on EU, they went on Niflheim and tried building up a clan and trying to rezerg. They attacked Freemasons, who a lot of people from EU liked, and they were a trade clan and were neutral, relatively. And as a result, you literally had the entire server come and blow them up because Sinister, who was controlling a lot of the server, and Duxon, who was controlling TRA at the time, didn't like him. And so Harm was completely destroyed and wiped out of the game, basically because two or three people didn't like that they attacked Freemasons.
Wow. Now, if we have a server with, the adventuring team, their goal, their stated numbers has always been to achieve a population of at least 10,000 players. So let's say we've got 10,000 actives on the NA server. That sort of dilutes the power of this, as somebody, who was it in the chat, John Wigg said Darkfall Illuminati. So that's what I'll refer to them as. So this Darkfall Illuminati, this sort of shadow government, these people who control the behind the scenes. If we have a larger population to the numbers of, let's fantasize, 10,000, that dilutes their power, don't you think?
No.
I think. Go ahead.
It makes it easier for those people. The people are naturally attracted to leaders. If we have the population just before DF went kaput was mostly composed of super alpha males. Am I wrong?
Super alpha males. I don't, that I've discussed that in another cast. It's a tough one for me to swallow in a video game world. But yeah, we'll just go with it and say yes. Not to demean your point here.
Well, but when you increase the population, you get more sheep. Sheep just follow people. They do whatever they're told. They're essentially they're cannon fodder. If you have with these Darkfall Illuminati, as we're going to call them, whatever, these people are going to easily control those other people. So if a plane gets blacklisted, you're not having just a few hundred guys coming down. You're going to have 1,000 players coming after you, and all those people are going to know your name. They're going to hate you for the same reason that their leaders do, and it's going to be that much more difficult to rebuild.
Okay, I feel like I don't know that I could quite agree with exactly what you said. You said when you increase the population, you get more sheep. Yes, but I would say that it's likely the number of sheep are going to be proportionate to the number of leaders now entering the game. You're going to have people from, I don't know, if the AV team does their marketing right and we achieve this 10K, you're going to have leaders bringing in their guilds from World of Warcraft, EverQuest, whatever. So I don't see it as just an influx of sheep.
From World of Warcraft, that wasn't. Do you really think that there's going to be any clans that went around for Darkfall 1 that are going to be a factor for the first 6 months of DF2?
For the first 6 months, it's definitely hard to say. I'm inclined to agree with you, but I almost think that'd be following sort of like a Darkfall ego that might exist within the community. And being that I love the game, I know the players.
It's just the standard meta game. I mean, the thing is, there's such thing as a steamroller advantage. I mean, that once you start getting a little bit of advantage, it keeps steamrolling. It's kind of like how a lot of these merc clans work. They have a few good members and a few successes, and you have more and more good players join them because that's where all the other good players are. And so it's almost like a magnet in and of itself. Success breeds more success. But, as far as new clans coming in, I mean, there's no way in hell they're going to have any real role. I mean, they may participate in an alliance here or there, but, it's really going to be the same people running the show that ran the show the last time.
Okay,
I mean, as Xpiher said, that the more people you have on a server, the easier it is to impose your will in the game once you blow up an alliance.
Right, but we're kind of talking about launch now, and so no alliance has, been blown up yet. So
alliances exist already.
Right, but you haven't blown them up yet, right?
Well, no. But as Zaffax's point was making is that people that are just going to come into the game as guilds, now without any of the pre-planning. They're going to look at it as like a standard theme park game where they're going to with FFA PvP with free for all PvP. That's how they're going to come into the game. They're not going to know all the politics. They're not going to know who's not to piss off unless they're coming in as an alliance, as an established power base. They're just going to have to fall in line.
Well, they won't be taken seriously. I mean, the thing is
That
like
too.
you're not gonna like completely. I think the metagame got to the point where people were smart enough to like not just completely disregard people. But the thing is, in all practical sense, I mean, you could have 100 guys, but if you never played the original Darkfall game, you'd have no understanding how the metagame works. I mean, I think a lot of guilds are just going to see you as sheep that are easy to take advantage of. I mean, you may think you're running stuff, and there were a lot of times in Darkfall 1 where clans were doing actions where they're like, hell yeah, like we're planning all this stuff. But they weren't the real ones doing stuff. I mean, go look at fucking Blood. Look at Thestron back when, he went after Newbie Down and then eventually Cairn. It was all over the boards of how Seth was going after everyone. But do you really think he could have done it had BKS and Vamp not wanted the exact same thing to happen? I mean, the only reason it was even made possible was by their force. And so, at the time, it was really BKS and a Vamp that were running the show.
One thing I think
So
you guys are
I think a lot of clans fall in that trap.
I think you're overlooking something that we see in real life. For example, where is Rome now? They fell apart. Shit falls apart. New powers come into play. Look at the Mongolian horde. They were nothing at one point, and then they went all the way into Eastern Europe. So I guess what I'm saying here is, okay, we have the old power structure of Darkfall. They will come into UW. We understand that, and they're not to be trifled with. I can completely see that. However, I have a very difficult time discounting that some very well organized guilds from, I'm just going to say WoW, just to be generic here and arbitrary, they come in with solid organization, a firm grasp on their people, excellent leadership. Yeah, they might get beaten down and suffer initially, but once again, we're also fantasizing about 10K, and let's even reduce it, 5K, 6K, all right? I think that they can be successful, and of course, if they do something that two other guilds don't want, it's obviously going to be made more difficult, specifically compounded by the number of guilds that disagree. However, that's life, and we see this throughout real-world history, is that the guys at the top don't always stay at the top. So I think that I personally believe, and once again, and I've admitted this already, I do not have the deep knowledge of the Darkfall metagame that you guys have. However, if we look at real life, new powers do rise, and they make a difference and an impact. And to me, it sounds like you guys are saying that's not going to happen. If you say it's not going to happen the first 6 months, I could actually buy into that. Like the prob and stats behind that, I could buy into that.
You'll have some new you'll have some new people rise from time and again, but a lot of that's because you call them the Illuminati or the power that be or whatever you want to say. That's a lot of the times because the top factor clans want them to. I mean, a lot of times, as the game goes on, you get in a lot of wars and everything else, and you piss people off, and you either wipe them out or they just keep coming back to haunt you. And so eventually you do start burning your political bridges, and you need to start, it's the tendency of people to zerg and to ally as many people as possible. So eventually you need some more people to work with you. And so then you'll like promote some, alliance and let them build up and everything else, hoping to make political ties down the line. But, they still don't fully understand the game. And, look at, well, I mean, you could say Scare Bears. I mean, Scare Bears was supported a bit on the NA server, and as soon as that was pulled from them, they, like, blew up immediately. But the thing is like,
Yeah.
I just don't see, these clans coming in and, just the metagame getting completely shaken up. The thing is, like, unlike ancient Rome, people don't die of disease in the game. There's no new technology being added to the game. The world's static. It's the same. Like, there may be more money in one person's hands or another, but the game lends itself to steamroller effects. I mean, you could kill my entire army. It doesn't matter. They come right back to life with the fucking Bind Stone. I mean, to, to make the parallel with real life just isn't accurate.
Well, I disagree in some way because even what you just said isn't thorough enough as a reply to actually contest effectively what I said. Yeah, people come back to life, so I'll use that same one. So you want to put my clan out of its misery and remove me from the server. So you guys attack and grief and whatever. But I've got solid organization and we're not quitters. We stick around. We don't attrit. So attrition is a real life thing, and that's going to
All
have
right,
to
I
be
guess
accounted for.
all right, so I guess part of the problem is that you talk about knowledge in the metagame. We've barely talked about the metagame at all. I mean, we've been talking at a very, very, very preliminary level as far as this discussion is concerned. It was a lot deeper than what this discussion, lends itself to. And then I guess if you have a knowledge of that and you look at it and look at the factor clans and different leaders and the relationships with each other, there is no way you are going to have some clan that nobody's ever heard of that's going to be a major factor in this game anywhere in the next year, year and a half. Now you may have some clan, some alliance like Cactus that go run some remote place in the world that no one fucking cares about. There were plenty of conflicts in the game. You had Sticks getting upset in the chat earlier about not bringing up Solar Raider. Yeah, you're gonna have clans like that. You're gonna have clans that have their own small little side stories. But as far as the major like global metagame, so like the major powers, you're not gonna have someone come in there that wasn't there before.
Well, this is definitely an interesting conversation, and I can't wait to see how it pans out. I think that realistically, especially now that you put a time frame on it, year to year and a half, I agree that that's more of a probability that the way you're saying this will shape up will likely be true. I just don't like to write off the newcomers because I know there are a lot of effective clans and clan leaders out there, and I'm excited to see what they do or do not do when UW launches. This also takes me into when you're talking about a Zerg. The question of limbo that looks like it's being put off and perhaps indefinitely by TASA's own admission. It looks to be possibly a mechanic that is just not right for Darkfall. However, he also said something that caught my ears that he believes, and I don't know how this is possible, that the community misread what they wrote on how limbo would work. And I personally don't know what we would possibly have misread about that. Do you know what he meant by that?
I think he's just trying to cover up for having a really stupid mechanic that no one in the fucking game wanted.
And are you guys, I take it you guys are both for, I mean, obviously by what you just said. How about you, Xpiher? Are you for limbo being removed?
If here my thing is, if you're gonna be against limbo for sieges and everything, you should be against bind stones or rune stones rather.
Okay,
I mean, House Recall.
that's interesting. I don't quite see it the same in that you. I mean, that's an interesting point, but rune stones you actually have to run out to an area and establish an anchor point ahead of time. I mean, I highly doubt you'd be able to sit there and rune up as you breach the enemy's line. Also, rune stones give you a very specific spot to rune in at, and they're a one-time use. There's whereas with the limbo system, you drop some gold, grab your bag, and you get a random spawn-in point. And it definitely seems to favor, to me, it seems to favor Zergs more so than the runestones. Or do you just totally disagree with that?
I disagree with it favoring Zergs more than runestones. Runestones, if you were a power clan, if you were a power clan or in one in Darkfall, you had you had upwards of 50 to like 200 runestones bound to your siege locations in multiple areas in order to get different advantages, regroup, gear, whatever you had to do. If anything, having the limbo system balanced out the power clans with the other ones. If it was limited in the sense of like it would take like 1,000 gold or it doesn't matter. Gold numbers don't matter as long as there was a limit. Like you can only use
Gold's
it twice in
irrelevant
2
though,
hours.
because the thing is you always have dupes in the game. And
That's
you
why I
always
said
have
gold doesn't
exploits in the
matter.
game, and yeah, resources are a non-issue. I mean, the thing is, if you go look at it, pretty much every single clan that's been a success in this game at some point had some really extravagant cheat. Like very few. Well, it's hard to name really any of the factor clans in this game that didn't have access to some type of major dupe or exploit. At
Wow.
least at some point in time.
Yeah, that's disheartening. When you say had access to a dupe or exploit, would you also include in that grouping the benefactors thereof, or are you saying clans that
Including, yeah, because some clans had, I mean, obviously some clans had bigger exploits than others, but some clans would get an exploit and they'd be very effective at taking advantage of that, you know, early advantage.
um,
So,
yeah, that definitely makes sense, and
I know I'm
I've
talking in riddles, but it's kind of intentional.
yeah, no, I can see it, and I understand. Especially with UW right around the corner, I definitely understand the operational security, if you will, surrounding various clan plans and even how past events might relate to events in the near future. We've got a few minutes left to this, so I want to touch on before we hang up the some of the things we've seen in the most recent videos and how you guys feel about them. I really want to give you the option to pick what you want to discuss. But I just want to toss this out there, and we'll begin with Xpiher on this. Do you have any thoughts on the Air Elementalist, or is there something else upcoming in UW that you've seen in a video, or the parts that you did catch with the Tasso's interview, whether you listened to it or read about it? Is there anything that you want to discuss on UW, or something that really caught your attention?
I think that they're showing us that they're with the role videos that they're actually paying attention to what we're saying as far as balance issues between the various roles and classes. Because with the air elementalist, they added in a reflect skill, but you still take damage. So while that it can make a tank kill themselves, but at the same time, if the power is just there, you can power through it. Especially with the kiting and everything else.
How about you, Zaf?
Yeah, I mean, some of it just has to wait to see how it plays out. I mean, I know a lot of people are concerned about the AOE pushback, whatever you want to call it, that the Berserk had.
The
But
whirlwind
the way I see it is,
tornado?
no, whatever the thing was where it shot like a burst of energy outside the character. But you know, I played Dark Souls as well, and it worked very effectively in that game. So I mean, sometimes something can seem really imbalancing, but you just have to see how it plays out in the game, and so it's not worth speculating on that. On a side note, though, I said I would. I got to give a shout out to Lock Legend. Told him I would, and you know, obviously Styx wants me to put a shout out for him. So Styx, best luck to your clan, and Xantar's working with him, and he's a pretty good guy. So if you're on the EU server, check him out.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about with UW? We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I know that overall, in the total context of Darkfall, whatever I don't know who's been here the entire time or who's new to Darkfall. There is just so much depth, as Zaffa and Xpiher have alluded to throughout the duration of this cast, and there is so much more, not even just depth but topics to touch on and then to dive deep into. Given that we do have a constraint on time, Xpiher or Zaffa, is there anything else that really caught your attention with UW? I don't want to leave you guys hanging. If you had anything that was inspiring or that you're really looking forward to, I mean, I can go on personally about the last two classes they showed and just dive into that. But I want to give you guys sort of the last word and end on that.
The only thing I'll say, and this will, I guess, be my closing point, and it's not so much mechanics related, but well, I guess sort of. But if you look at the mechanics and you look at, at least from my vantage point, of seeing what some of the different alliances are doing for the game and what their plans are and what their resources are, I think that Darkfall launched on the NA server for, you call it UW, I call it Unholy Wars, but I think it's going to be the most interesting launch the game's ever had. I think it's very fun times are ahead. Potentially even comparable to the launch on the EU server originally back on DF1. But as far as I can see, people have a lot of plans, uh, and they're taking the game a lot more seriously and are using a lot more sophisticated methods to achieve their ends than they did before. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, and whatever competition there's out there.
Xpire, last
Same
words,
thing.
thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to the game, man. It's what it is.
And will you be playing EU, or can you not tell yet?
No, I'll be on NA, because that's where I'm from. So, but I don't know Just outside of that, I really don't know what's going on with it.
Okay, well, gosh, can't wait to see you guys in game. If you'll hang out for just a moment while I wrap this cast up. I'd like to thank everybody who did join today, and everybody from APOC Stream that stuck around. Thanks for swinging by and checking out the cast. And for all of you, please follow the channel if you're interested in listening to more Darkfall discussion. I also stream games, albeit rarely. And for all you, whether you follow or not, the most important thing is get into Darkfall Unholy Wars. It's going to release on the 12th of December. At least that's the date the development team has set. And, we're all excited about it. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be fucking awesome. And if you are a video game player, which you must be if you're listening to this, then you would be doing yourself wrong if you don't jump into Unholy Wars. And by the way, Adventuring did get it greenlit on Steam, so you will be able to purchase the game on Steam, or I believe also through Adventuring's website. But it's going to be a great time, and we really hope that a lot of people join. A higher server population will definitely make for a greater dynamic. So thanks for joining, guys. We look forward to our future cast. Just to give you a quick update on that, this upcoming Sunday, or no, I'm sorry. Whoa, it's either Sunday or Monday. I'll post it, though. We've got Paragus Rants. We're going to talk to him. On Wednesday, we have Dreadlord Cripey from Gentleman coming up. And the following, either Monday or Tuesday, I believe it's Tuesday, we will be speaking with Bear Grimm from NME, unless things fall through there. He's been very busy lately. So those are the immediate casts we have on our docket. There are other people that we're trying to slot before the game goes live, but that might not happen. So either way, keep a lookout for what we've got going on. Thanks for joining and all your input. Have a great night. Thanks, guys.